Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Bat Around. I'm your host, Paul Valley. He is Zachary Allen Goodman, my co-host and
Allen Goodman
and producer.
Wouldn't be another way to start the show other than that. That's the way to start the show.
Zachary Allen Goodman.
Just gets everyone in the mood.
I zig, he zags. Welcome to the Bat Around. Another gloomy but nice day here in the Baltimore-Towson area. Today's show brought to you by your local Toyota dealer. The Toyota Tacoma comes in a range of models and trim lines, and you can choose the perfect Tacoma to reflect your unique personality and driving habits. Check out buyatoyota.com for new deals on new Tacomas from your local Toyota dealer today. Orioles, big-time winners over the formerly... what's the word I'm looking for? The formerly formidable New York Mets. I think I threw myself saying formerly when I was trying to say
something
formidable.
Like that.
Over the formerly formidable New York Mets, Orioles with a big-time victory last night, 10-3 over those Mets. You look at Dean Kramer, gets into the sixth inning. He had only allowed 2 hits and 1 walk in the game and no runs. He gets 1 out in the 6th inning, and then he walks 3 straight batters on like 14 pitches and finds himself with the game tied after giving up a 2-run single to Francisco Lindor. And it's now 2-2, and he's leaving the game. The Orioles, though, they managed to come in with Michael Baumann. He gets a double play to get out of the inning, and then the Orioles immediately score to go back up on top, eventually taking the game 10-3. James McCann, against his former team, reached base all 4 times, 3 for 3, a double, 2 singles, 5 RBIs for James McCann. Jordan Westburg, 2 for 3, 2 walks, a home run, 3 RBIs. The more I watch him play, the more I think he 100% belongs. And I want to see him play more. With Jordan Westburg, there was a point where he sat like 3 or 4 straight games, just like Colton Cowser
Right before the
has.
deadline, I think it was.
Yeah, where he just wasn't playing. And I understand it because Adam Frazier's having power and production-wise a career year.
Yeah.
And he's barreling up the ball more than he ever has. The average leaves a lot to be desired, but he's productive when he's making his contact. But Jordan Westburg proven he belongs on the field just about every day. Orioles keep rolling along. They took 3 of 4 from Tampa Bay, lost 2 of 3 to the Phillies. They should have won 2 of 3 in that series. Blew a save in game 2. It would have given them the series win. But then they take 2 of 3 from the Yankees, 3 of 4 from the Blue Jays, and now they've taken the first game from a reeling Mets team that traded away just about everybody not named Brandon Nimmo and Pete Alonso.
Right.
And look, I don't see any reason why the Orioles shouldn't sweep this series.
Well, right, and I want to go back to the Blue Jays because I think that's the really significant series for the Orioles because I can't remember who was on GCR the other day, but someone came on and said, it's not really the Rays that scares me, it's the Blue Jays in this division. And I kind of have to agree with that. The Rays, they've played, 500 ball over the past month and a half, 2 months or so. They haven't been quite as good. And I don't know, that was a week ago or so now that stat came out. But I look at the Rays and I go, okay, they're scary, but they've had injuries. The Blue Jays scare me more. And then the Orioles go in and take 3 out of 4. And that kind of changed my perspective on it. I don't know if the Blue Jays are really that good. You've got a guy like George Springer, who had a few big hits in that series, actually, and especially in the series. In the one game they won.
He came into the series 0 for his last 34.
Right, and then had a few big hits. And I believe the one game they won, he had one of the deciding hits in that game. But other than that, there really isn't a lot of great going on for the Blue Jays right now. Well, so my perspective's kind of changed.
It's funny because back in May when the Orioles went to Toronto for the first time, Toronto had won like 5 of 6. Yeah. And they were really starting to turn things on, and the Orioles swept them. Mm-hmm. And then you go back to this past series against Toronto, and Toronto had won, what was it, like 11 of 15 or something like that. They were playing really good baseball. Right. And then the Orioles came in and kicked them in the teeth again, took 3 of 4. Is it that the Blue Jays aren't as good as we think they are, or are the Orioles that much better than we've given them credit for?
And it might be both. I think it definitely could be both. But, you look around the division right now, and the Yankees aren't really a threat. I don't think at this point the Red Sox are going to be a huge threat. So it's really up to who's going to be that bigger threat in the Rays and the Blue Jays. And I think right then we saw the Orioles are completely capable of beating the Blue Jays whenever they want to. And I think that's really good news. I think that's really good news.
You mentioned the Red Sox, but the Red Sox since like the middle of June
Been playing good.
I heard last week, I don't know if this is still true because this was more than a few days ago, but it was sometime last week. I heard that the Red Sox had the best record in the American League since the middle of June.
They've played great, yeah.
Yeah. So the whole division's tough. The Yankees, here's the thing about the Yankees.
There's a lot of things about the Yankees.
I called them frauds in spring training because you look at their lineup and they signed Judge. That's a monster contract for a guy who's played 2 full seasons.
Right.
He's been injured every other year.
And once again, it's missed significant time.
Missed significant time this year. And same thing with Giancarlo Stanton. And he's been, hitting a lot of home runs recently, which is what Stanton does, but the batting average is still right at the Mendoza line. That whole Yankees team is a bunch of beer league softball players.
Yep.
And a lot of older guys who spend a lot of time on the IL. Anthony Rizzo on the IL with concussion symptoms.
Yeah.
DJ LeMahieu got hurt a couple years ago, and he still hasn't returned to the player that he was before the injury. Stanton and Judge, we just talked about that. They go ahead and they sign Carlos Rodon. He's pitched 4 or 5 times, and he's been bad every single time out. Nestor Cortez hurt. Luis Severino hurt. Domingo Germán hurt.
So I have a great stat to back up your argument right here. Mm-hmm. I saw this posted on Twitter by fan of the Yankees @RealBoshek, just to credit him. He found this. Brian Cashman has 25 years of drafting and developing. This is his tweet. I'm quoting. Here are the top 3 B-War players. 44.3, Brett Gardner. 39.6, Aaron Judge. 2.5, Anthony Volpe.
Yeah.
He's third.
Yeah.
Out of the guys Brian Cashman's drafted in his career.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. That's absolutely unreal.
Their farm system has left a lot to be desired. They have a lot of guys who, when they're on the field, are really good, but they aren't on the field that long. Anthony Rizzo got off to an amazing start this year and fell off a freaking cliff about the middle of May. This team, you take away Garrett Cole, you take away Aaron Judge, and they're one of the worst teams in baseball.
Correct. Absolutely.
The bullpen's very good, but you got to get to the bullpen with a lead.
Right.
And
they don't hit.
and here's the other thing. They have gone out and they've spent money, right? They've signed Garrett Cole. They've signed Carlos Rodon. They've re-signed Aaron Judge. They have the big contracts for Stanton and for LeMahieu, right? They kept Anthony Rizzo at $18 million a year, which was, I like Anthony Rizzo. He's a great defender. He has power, but he hasn't been better than like a .230 hitter in 4 years. So I look at that team and I say, you guys are spending your money in the wrong places. You're not drafting and developing. Yeah. You're spending your money on aging, often injured players.
Right.
You've got to get younger and you've got to get better fast. And I don't want them to. I don't like the Yankees. The Yankees not being good is awesome to me. But
sure, yeah. I don't disagree.
Brian Cashman's track record with drafting and development clearly is
horrible.
Not good. His team has been underperforming. Hasn't won a World Series since 2009. Have they even been back to a World? No, they haven't even been back to the World Series since 2009. And Aaron Boone, one of the worst tactical in-game managers I've ever seen. And so you look at John Schneider is really bad.
He's quite bad.
He's really bad. You look at that team. How much longer does Cashman keep his job? How much longer does Boone keep his job? I mean, Boone was winning 95 to 100 games for a few years there because the talent then was so good. Now they have middling and declining talent, and they're signing all these guys who, when they're good, when they're on and good, are really good players. They're signing a bunch of Chris Bryants.
Right. I don't even think people realize just how bad that stat is, that Brian Cashman has gotten 2 guys above 2.5 WAR. That he's drafted
in
and
25 years.
And he's signed a lot of international guys. I have to give him credit there. I mean, there's been guys that, and Robinson Cano being one of them, that he signed out of the Dominican Republic, I believe it was, and made into one of the best players of all time in Robinson Cano, one of the best second basemen. But you have to look at his drafting record, and it's clearly been extremely poor. Extremely poor. That's 25 years, and Anthony Volpe, who I wouldn't even really call a very productive player this year. He's been okay, but
you love Anthony Volpe.
I love Anthony Volpe, but he hasn't been very good, and I can't dance around that, unfortunately. 2.5 WAR for Anthony Volpe's career is the 3rd best guy drafted by Brian Cashman. That's unbelievable. And I'm sure there's been guys that have been drafted, traded, and that's a whole other story. But this is Yankees.
What I will say is, because they're the Yankees, it's harder to hit on guys when you're constantly picking in the bottom quarter of the league, bottom third of the league, because you're winning every year. They have no losing seasons over that 25-season stretch. They're somehow above 500, despite, in my opinion, maybe having the worst roster in the division.
Well, I think the discourse about Brian Cashman is starting to really change, too. You saw on MLB Network, I don't know if you were watching right before the trade deadline, but they brought up Stanton, and usually MLB Network generally carries the water for the Yankees in a lot of ways. They talk about the Yankees very positively. And they eviscerated Brian Cashman. They just went after him, and they said this is one of the worst moves in recent history. And I think it was Steve Phillips was one of the guys talking, and there were a few others. But it was just completely different narrative than we've heard about Brian Cashman and the Yankees from even the media. So that's interesting.
Their team is very middling. They're very middling, which is weird to say about the Yankees, but it is what it is. And look, at some point, you have to believe, because it's the Yankees, that they're going to make the moves to turn this thing around. But they haven't. Garrett Cole was their last significant move, in my opinion. Signing Carlos Rodon, what's he done for you?
Yeah,
he's been what he's been his entire career, hurt.
Yeah.
Only this time when he's back on the field, he's not very good.
And the fact that they haven't cut bait officially with Domingo Germán after everything that's going on, and now he's out for the year again because of something that's I guess a little bit an unfortunate circumstances, something that he didn't I won't get into that. But point is, what I'm saying is there's a lot of old and unproductive players on this team that have problems off the field, have problems on the field.
Luis Severino gave up 3 runs in the first inning yesterday. His last 2 starts, he's given up 10 runs in the first inning. I believe he gave up 9 runs to the Orioles last Sunday, and then 5 runs last night to the Astros. Remember how good he used to be?
Yeah.
He would take the mound, you're like, oh my God, we have no chance today.
Right.
Now he's one of the worst pitchers in baseball. And I don't know what happened to him. I know he got hurt, and it's been a really long road to recovery for him, and every time he comes back, he gets hurt again.
Yeah.
At what point do they have to cut bait with him? And this show isn't about talking about the Yankees and all their problems, but it's all leading to a larger point that we're making here. And you look at the Tampa Bay Rays, they lost Rasmussen, they lost Springs, they lost Shane Baz, and now Shane McClanahan is probably done for the year.
Right. And that's the biggest blow of them all.
Yeah.
By far.
Last year's Cy Young Award winner, potentially this year's Cy Young Award winner, he's probably done for the year.
Unbelievable.
And so this division is the Orioles to lose at this point. The Orioles are coming from such a position of strength right now, and they go out there and they just win. They just win night in and night out. We're getting to a point, we talked about this a week or two ago, where back in 2014, the second half of the year, the Orioles took the field, and I expected them to win every single night. When I turn the Orioles on, and maybe that's why we get so upset when they lose, why it's so magnified when they lose. And when they lose games like the one they lost to the Blue Jays, where they gave up 3 runs without the benefit of a hit from the Blue Jays, they find ways to lose that's like, are you effing kidding me? Because the other team didn't beat them, they beat themselves.
Right.
But that happens so infrequently that it's glaring and magnified when it does happen. I expect this team right now, every time they go out, I expect that they're going to win the ballgame.
I agree.
100%. Now, look, we can get lost in the sauce here. We can definitely get lost in the fact that they're playing the New York Mets. And the Mets are not the Mets from a month ago.
No.
Which they weren't very good back then, but they had the talent to be good.
Yeah.
There's no Scherzer. There's no Verlander. They got rid of Kana. They don't have anybody in their starting rotation that strikes fear in you anymore. Their lineup, they still have some good players. They got Nimmo, they got Lindor, they got Alvarez, they've got Alonso. They still have good players in their lineup.
Orioles legend DJ Stewart.
Orioles legend. I was expecting him to go deep.
Yeah,
last night.
I thought so too.
Honestly, I kind of wanted him to. It's stupid. He's
10-3. I mean,
he's like, I'm like Brandon Hyde, and he's like my Ryan McKenna. I always loved DJ Stewart because the batting eye has always been there.
Yeah.
And if he could get hot, he could be a difference maker offensively. I really thought that a couple of years ago, I said if he can, stay healthy, I think he can be a prime number 2 hitter for the Orioles because he gets on base. If he can hit 250, he's going to have a 350 on base percentage, and he's going to be fine. And he's sneaky fast. He couldn't hit a fastball. How many times did we see him whiff at a fastball right down the middle? Could not hit a fastball. He's not having a bad year for the Mets. But he's had limited opportunities.
Yeah, I was going to say it's been like 20 games.
Yeah,
so not a ton.
But I was hoping that if you can never hope that your team gives up a home run, I was hoping it was going to be DJ Stewart. But we're burying the lead here. The Orioles, best team in the American League record-wise, best team in the AL East, which is the toughest division in baseball, and they added Jack Flaherty, which what happened at the deadline, people are freaking out. And I tried not to post anything because I'm like, they're going to do something. And then you get to the last hour. And I tweeted out, on the one hand, I trust Mike Elias is going to do something because it's very obvious that he needs to.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I'm trying to also figure out how the broadcasters are going to spin a non-move at the beginning of the broadcast tonight by saying, this team already has the best record in the American League and they just trusted their guys. Goes out in the 11th hour and he makes a trade for Jack Flaherty. The Orioles give up Drew Rom, Cesar Prieto, and I can't remember.
Zach Showalter.
Zach Showalter. I knew the last name. I couldn't remember his first name was Zach. Gives up Zach, and they give up Zach Showalter. No top 10 prospects to get Jack Flaherty. Now, look, Jack Flaherty, before his injury history, at 23 years old, was one of the best, 22, 23 years old, one of the best pitchers in the National League. He was a Cy Young candidate. He looked every bit a Cy Young candidate when he pitched for the Orioles.
Sure did.
Gave up a single and a walk to start the game, and then nothing after that until the sixth inning. The sixth inning has been the Orioles starters' kryptonite for some reason. Guys get into the sixth inning, and all of a sudden they lose their command and start giving up hits and runs. But 6 innings pitched, 2 hits, 2 runs, 2 walks, 1 run, 8 strikeouts. He was every bit as advertised.
Dominant.
And then some. He had thrown 6 pitches at 96 miles an hour or faster all season. He threw 7 in that start for the Orioles, including his only pitch of the season at 97 or higher.
Right.
97 miles an hour, and I believe it was his first fastball. Now, Andy Kotska, from the Baltimore Banner, who we're going to have on the show later today, he came out, he asked Flaherty after that start, was it something the Orioles tweaked? And Flaherty said, no, there was no time to implement any changes. I think it was adrenaline and being on 8 days rest.
Yeah.
So, but really, really good to start. He had a 3.04 ERA in his last 5 starts coming into that start with the Orioles. Looked as good as you could have hoped him to look. What are your thoughts on the Flaherty trade, and what are your thoughts on what the Orioles gave up?
Well, I saw the name being tossed around about 4 hours before the deal was made, and I said, you know what, that would actually make a lot of sense. He's a guy who is a reclamation project in a lot of ways because he was so good at one point. He had a second half, I want to say it was 2019 maybe, where he was arguably the best pitcher in baseball. He was unbelievable. He had like a 1.9 ERA or something like that. He was crazy good. And since then, he hasn't been Jack Flaherty. Hasn't been the same guy. Hasn't been the first-round pick, the top 100 prospect, all the great things he was. But I saw the name being floated around, and he's only 27 years old. Unfortunately, a rental, but a guy that makes a lot of sense for this team. And I thought, hey, they probably wouldn't have to give too much up. And that's the deal they made. There are some guys I would have rather have. I mean, I, of course, have loved Justin Verlander. That was probably not going to happen. I mean, again, the Orioles probably made a call, and they said, well, we want Heston Kjerstad, and the Orioles hung up the phone. Something along those lines. That's what I would expect. But this is a move where they didn't give up a ton. Zach Showalter, I do think, is going to be a legit prospect. I mean, the numbers look already really good. High school kid, a lot of development left to go. But Drew Rom, I don't really see as much of anything more than a depth piece. Cesar Prieto, unfortunately, was never going to have a chance to play here. Never was going to have a chance.
The bat was going to play, but the defense, he's not a good defender.
So, overall, I mean, this trade makes total sense. You look up and down, it makes total sense. You have to give up something to get something. Giving up was Zach Showalter. Get something, you get Jack Flaherty, who, if you turn around into what he was, just a few years ago, can be definitely one of the better pitchers in baseball. It's a really high upside move. And the Orioles pitching lab has been really successful with a lot of reclamation projects. So we'll just hope that continues to happen and they continue to keep his velocity high. I think that's going to be one of the keys.
Well, and so they have to go and get everything they can get out of him this year. We'll talk about maybe an extension after the season's over. But you have to hope that that's something that's going to be in the works if he's earned it. He can't go out there and pitch to a 4.5 ERA the rest of the year. And, I mean, the Orioles might offer him something, but it won't be what they should be offering a guy that they made a big move for at the deadline. You're right, they have to give up something to get something, and if what they're giving up is a high school draft pick as a pitcher who has really great stuff but is still years away, you can live with that.
He's like a 2026 guy, probably. Like, you're looking far down the line for him, but the numbers, I think he had thrown like a .9 ERA this year so far. Like, he'd been really good.
Yeah.
And only a few starts, low sample size. But Showalter was an 11th round pick last year, a guy I think they signed over slot for a decent amount. And, that, again, you got to give up something to get something. And certainly you'd rather give up Zach Showalter than Heston Kjerstad, Colton Cowser, Jordan Westberg, any of those guys. So it's a win.
Saw a lot of people upset about the inclusion of Drew Rom. And I'm just like, would you have been that upset at the inclusion of like Zimmerman?
Yeah,
because
it's the same thing.
It would have been the same thing, right? So I don't know, man. I thought this was a good deal. He went out there and showed it was a good deal with his first start. I'm happy with it. Are you surprised that they didn't go get a reliever?
I am not surprised because this is Mike Elias we're talking about. I really feel like Mike Elias just wants to use the depth they have in the organization, but I really am disappointed in that. And I know we're going to talk about that in Orioles Banter a little bit more, and I'm going to explain my feelings and dive into a little bit more there, but I feel like there's an opportunity missed. I really do.
I think a lot of us do. We will get into it in Orioles Banter because they have options. It's just, how do you bridge the gap till those options are ready to get?
By the way, Drew Rom, 5.34 ERA over 19 games pitched this year. I really don't feel any sadness about Drew Rom being in that trade. I wish him best of luck. But
hopefully he can do something. He's always had a good career in the minor leagues. He's always put up good numbers. He's a 4A guy, in my opinion.
4A guy. He's the Ryan McKenna of pitchers.
I was going to say that, and man, there's been a lot of hate spewed at Ryan McKenna. And it makes me feel bad because I've talked to him on Glenn Clark Radio when I was a producer there.
I'm sure he's a great guy.
And he's fine. There's nothing wrong with Ryan McKenna. He's a good person. He's a Major League Baseball player. I think we can agree that there is a spot on a lot of Major League rosters for Ryan McKenna.
Yep.
On this Orioles team, because of what they have already, when it's also a year from now, you're going to look at the Orioles roster as maybe the best in all of baseball. With what they have coming through the pipeline, Jim Bowden was on 105.7 The Fan yesterday, and he said he thinks Jackson Holliday could come to the majors right now and hit 300. And
wow,
he's coming up next year. That's why Joey Ortiz doesn't have a future in Baltimore unless he plays second base. You know what I mean? Heston Kjerstad has been tearing the cover off the ball everywhere for a year and a half now.
Yeah.
And right now, there's not a spot for him. There's no reason he's not in the major leagues right now, aside from the fact that if they bring him up, they want him to play every day, and who's he going to play over at this point?
Yeah.
So Ryan McKenna, it's not, oh, I hate Ryan McKenna. It's he's not good enough to be on this roster.
Correct.
Anymore.
Yeah.
And you look at what the Orioles did last night, and the first five guys reached in the bottom of the sixth, I think it was the bottom of the seventh inning. First five guys reach, and the Orioles put up a 4 spot, and he comes up and strikes out.
And in the Blue Jays series, twice with the bases loaded, with one out.
In the game that they lost, he came up with the bases loaded twice and struck out, and he comes up with nobody on base. His next at bat. And he flies out to deep right field. If he does that in either of his first two at-bats, different ball game.
I mean, all you have to do is put a ball in play deep enough to. I mean, it's just not that. It's not that crazy. It's really not. So Ryan McKenna to me, and he probably can even beat out a ground ball if he hits it. Tries to hit one of the left side or something like that. This guy's got to put the ball in play, and he doesn't a lot. And the numbers have kind of dropped off for him. He had that one stretch where he was up to like 305.
Yeah, he had a really nice stretch from the end of April through like the end of May.
But the numbers are not there anymore.
Yeah, and hell of a bunter. And I'm not saying that to make fun of him. I'm saying that because it's a lost art in baseball. When the guy goes to put down a bunt, he gets it down almost every single time. And that's important, especially for the role that he's filling. When he's batting and there's runners on first and second and nobody out, he needs to be bunting every time. And the fact is, if he does, he gets it down. That's what a fourth outfielder is supposed to do. Play good defense and play fundamental baseball, get the guys over.
Exactly.
Striking out the bases loaded in a big situation with one out 2 times in a row, not what you're here for.
It's not it. No.
You've got to do something. You've got to be able to put the ball in play. And again, I don't dislike Ryan McKenna, the person. He started 4 games in a row. with Colton Cowser. And I get it that Colton Cowser's really been struggling.
Yeah.
But the guy comes up in his lone at bat the other day and rips a double into the gap. And instead of trying to take advantage of that and say, you know what, maybe he's going to start to build confidence off this, let's play him, he rides the bench again. Then he comes in as a pinch hitter. He strikes out twice.
I think the only way Colton Cowser is going to get going this season
is to
actually play. And not to play once or twice a week. It's to play every day. They've got to get him in there because, frankly, they don't have a better option right now. And also, one more thing about the outfield that it's driving me crazy is that Brandon Hyde has started for 2 days in a row Ryan O'Hearn in the outfield.
Yep.
It's got to stop. It's got to stop.
Ryan Frazier playing left field, Ryan O'Hearn playing right field. You have 19 outfielders on your roster. Why in the world do you need to play infielders in the outfield, especially when they're limited as outfielders?
Right.
I get it. You wanted to have O'Hearn's bat in the lineup. One, he didn't do anything last night. And two, you put him in right field.
Right.
And you're not playing Santander, and you're DHing Rutschman. I get it. You do need to lay off with Rutschman a little bit because you're getting you're into that stretch run now. It's August. He's played more than any catcher in baseball, so I totally get that. But I don't know, man. Ryan O'Hearn playing right field, not for me.
It's not for me either. And I love having Ryan O'Hearn's bat in the lineup. He's been huge. I don't think the Orioles are where they are without Ryan O'Hearn. Yeah. I really don't.
No, he's had an
got
incredible season.
They can figure something out to not make him in the outfield. They can figure something out. Yeah. I guarantee you they can make this happen. Where Ryan O'Hearn's DHing, Ryan Mountcastle plays first base, Mountcastle gets the day off, whatever it is. Ryan O'Hearn's bat has to be in the lineup. It's not in right field or left field. Yeah. Frankly, ever. It shouldn't be.
Yeah. And then the good news is Cedric Mullins starts a rehab assignment tonight with the Bowie Bay Sox. He'll be there today and tomorrow. Hopefully that means he'll be back in the next week or so. I'm sure that they want to kind of take their time with him because I think maybe he came back a little quickly after the first injury, and maybe that led to the next one, and hopefully gets off to a better start than he did last time because really slow start when he came off the IL the first time around, and then as soon as he started to heat up, he got hurt again. So hopefully he can hit the ground running coming on this rehab assignment. But look, anything that we frown upon right now, we're splitting hairs because this team is really good and they're playing really good, inspired baseball. And at this point, I don't see how they aren't the favorites to go to finish this thing in first place, given the rest of the division. And with that in mind, we now are joined by Stan the Fan Charles for his weekly segment. Stan, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. How you doing, guys?
We're doing great. Orioles with a big win last night against a lowly Mets team. And Stan, Zach and I were just talking about this in our intro to the show, that you look at the rest of the division and you look at how the Orioles, both times that they've gone into Toronto was playing really good baseball, and the Orioles kicked them in the teeth each time. The Yankees are hurt and on a downward spiral, in my opinion. The Red Sox, I don't think, have the pitching to make a run, and the Rays have 4/5 of their opening day starting rotation on the IL, and I think all of them are going to end up missing the rest of the year. This division has to be the Orioles to lose at this point, does it not?
It sure feels that way right now. I wouldn't underestimate Tampa having one more run in them. They picked up Aaron Savali at the deadline, so they start with Tyler Glasnow and Savali. And if Savali pitches at a high level and stays away from injury, that gives them two really, real solid starters at the top of the rotation. But right now, I don't think they have enough in the pitching department.
Yeah, they've been really beat up, both offensively and in the field, basically all year. And that's what happened to them a lot last year too. I think at one point they had 17 guys on the IL last year. So the Rays kind of falling off because of the injuries. The Orioles still playing really good and inspired baseball. We talk about starting pitching, Stan. Dean Kramer goes out last night. In the first 5 innings, he looks absolutely phenomenal. Gets an out in the 6th and then walks 3 straight guys on like 15 pitches and then gives up a 2-run single to Lindor. Dean Kramer, what are you seeing from him? We've already seen Tyler Wells demoted to Double-A to kind of get a breather. They sent him to their pitching lab. Is it now becoming even more magnified with Dean Kramer's struggles hitting a wall in the 6th inning and what we've seen from the rest of the rotation as they're all coming up on career highs for innings?
Well, that Met team last night was really a lifeless bunch. They really looked like a miserable team. And I'm just gonna give this a one-off on Dean Kramer, that he just sort of got lulled into, where his head wasn't fully involved in that game last night in that sixth inning. I don't know what caused it. I don't think it has really anything to do with hitting a wall. I just don't know what happened to him last night.
Yeah, you're just
So
watching him.
I'm gonna give him a mulligan, and I'm not gonna get too worried about it.
Yeah, it was crazy, Stan, because he was cruising, and then all of a sudden it looked like he was like you said. I think he got into a lull last night. It looked like he was just going through the motions and couldn't put the ball over the plate for three batters. Just absolutely just going through the motions.
I've not seen that very often by a major league pitcher. That was just really ugly, but I'm not really that worried because of what I watched for the first 5 innings.
Yeah.
So
yeah, he was very good for the first 5 innings, and maybe there's something to it that the other team wasn't too inspired, and he kind of lost motivation.
No, they really look like they're going through the motions right now.
Now, Stan, the Orioles, they needed rotation help. They went out and got it in the 11th hour at the deadline, trading for Jack Flaherty. He goes out there and puts together a phenomenal start in his first appearance for the Orioles, throwing harder than he has all year, having some of the best stuff that he's had all year. What are your thoughts on what the Orioles gave up for Jack Flaherty, on him being the one that was brought in, and do you think that the Orioles should have done more at the deadline than just bringing in Jack Flaherty?
The second part of whether they should have done more. I don't know how long Mullins and Hicks are out, but there was a possibility maybe to have picked up an outfielder.
Mm-hmm.
If they somehow aren't of the opinion that Kotska is ready to outperform Ryan McKenna, then But I just don't know their medicals on Mullins and Hicks, whether they're due back in a week, whether it's going to be 3 weeks. I don't know. I'm very happy with what we ended up with. Still would have probably liked to have added one more relief pitcher, and I'm sure they tried. But I think they did real well. I like Flaherty. I used to love Flaherty back in 19 and 20 before the shoulder injuries that he had. And I'm not so sure that this season he wasn't healthy. But remember, in St. Louis, they were going through the transition from Molina as a catcher, who's arguably one of the greatest defensive catchers of all time, to a guy that 6 weeks into the season, the manager was calling him out, or maybe even 4.5 weeks into the season, was calling out that he can't catch. We got to play him in the outfield, and that was really a cluster F. The way they handled that, and I'm not so sure that Flaherty's poor outings had something to do with. He had one outing where I think he pitched. Paul, you probably looked it up too. 2 1/3 innings, he gave up 10 earned runs.
Yep, saw that.
I'm not sure if you're not on the same page with the catcher, and believe in what that catcher's putting down there, it can really throw you off. And when you go from Molina to a guy you're not comfortable with, I think the fact that he battled back and threw 5 good starts in July was a real good sign. And I think that in my article that I wrote about him earlier in the week, I said he's sort of a younger version of Matt Harvey, that I still think there's a lot left in the tank. And I'm hopeful that Chris Holt and Darren Holmes and the analytic people in the organization can help him to look a lot more like he did on Thursday afternoon than he's done for most of this season,
Yeah, he certainly looked every bit of the role that he was brought in here to fill at the trade deadline. Now, Mike Elias said they took some really big swings leading up to the deadline. They were linked to Dylan Cease, linked to Justin Verlander, and even Eduardo Rodriguez before pulling the trigger on Flaherty. Stan, the team has 8 top 100 prospects, so even if like they were asked for their number 4 to 7 prospect, that value is probably higher than somebody else's number 1 or number 2 prospect in a lot of cases. Jackson Holiday is probably he is a hard stop for anybody that would have been available at the deadline, unless it was Ohtani and he was willing to sign an extension, and even then, right? So you're looking at, were the Orioles just asked for way too much, or do you think it was just one of those situations where these teams wanted a Jackson Holiday and the Orioles were just like, no, we're not going to budge?
Well, I don't think there was any realistic possibility of asking for Jackson Holiday, and I think the Orioles probably have that same feeling toward Kjerstad and Kobe Mayo.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there was really any way anybody was getting any of those 3 players. After that, Norby is having a real nice season. Ortiz is having a real nice season. Am I missing somebody really special after that?
You already said Kjerstad. There's not really anybody else that.
Yeah, there's Kjerstad, Mayo, and Holiday, and Ortiz, and Norby.
Right.
I think that, first of all, it turned out, surprised me that Eduardo Rodriguez essentially did get traded, but he had the 5 and 10 year, right to turn down a trade. That he turned down a trade to the Dodgers to stay with the Tigers.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty interesting. I mean, it was interesting, So I don't know that that was really a realistic possibility that he would have left for Baltimore either. I don't know.
Well, they did say that he had 10 teams in his no trade clause that he would have to okay a trade. Some of the teams that he would have okayed a trade to were the Orioles, were the San Diego Padres. And he said he wanted to stay on the East Coast, but he would have gone to the Padres. It was just something with the Dodgers, maybe their core values, that he said he's not going to get into, he's going to keep to himself, where it just wasn't a fit for he and his family.
Right. So, anyway, I think they did real well. I like the upside of Flaherty rather than figuring out why Cease is having such a poor year.
Yeah.
And once you get him, and you had to give up more. I don't think we gave up anything that we're going to really regret in that trade. I don't know enough about Showalter, but he's probably 3 or 4 years away. And I'm very happy with the return we got. I'm not a big Prieto fan, and Drew Rahm's been around long enough. There needed to be some improvement to me. Now, I'm sure their people in St. Louis think that they can figure that out. So Good luck to them on that. I hope it's a win trade for both teams.
Yeah.
That's what you really want to have happen. Where St. Louis is now, they need to sort of reboot their farm system a little bit, and they were happy with the return, and I'm very happy with what we got.
I agree with you, and I don't think that any of us are gonna find ourselves in a situation. Knock on wood, nothing's ever guaranteed. But I don't think any of us are gonna find ourselves in a situation a year from now where Cesar Prieto's hitting 300 for St. Louis, and we are lamenting the day that we traded him. I think that this is a trade that's gonna end up that hopefully it works out, like you said, for both sides. Now you mentioned
what would really be the real workout for this trade, though, is because you did give up three prospects that you thought something of. Would be really nice if what I envision happens, that Jack Flaherty, who has had some health struggles and some pitching struggles over the last 3 years, if Holt really can help him get back to closer to what he was, and I don't know we'll ever see the guy that threw 99 or 100, but if he brings him back and then he's a free agent, and the Orioles try and sign him, I'm not saying a 5-year, $80 million contract, but perhaps a 2-year, $24 million contract. He'd be wise, if he gets the good results here, he'd be wise to stick in Baltimore for a couple of years, and that would really make the trade a big win, in my opinion.
I agree with you. I think that and Zach and I kind of touched on that a little bit right before we got you on, that's kind of the goal, right? That he comes in here and he pitches like a number 1 or a number 2, and then you're able to sign him to an extension, like you said, maybe 2, maybe 3 years, and at that point he's
maybe two with an option of some kind, that's sensible. But go ahead.
I don't really think there's any way you make this trade if you're not planning on at least trying to make him an extension candidate. I think you almost have to make this trade with that in mind. So that's just my look at it. I rentals are not something that I see Mike Elias being super interested in overall.
Yeah.
I'm in agreement with you. And when Dan Duquette made the Andrew Miller trade, I thought the same thing, and then the club didn't have an appetite. When you go back to that, Zach, even if you didn't really want Andrew Miller here for 5 years, you could have signed him and knew that at that trade deadline that next year, you would have been able to move him to anybody would have wanted him if he was signed for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, and that may have helped the Orioles get back in the race in 2015 rather than the Gerardo Parra move that they ended up making. Yeah. So, Stan, we talked a little bit about the Orioles bullpen and how they didn't really make a move aside from Fujinami, which was 2 weeks before the deadline. You have John Means, DL Hall, and Michael Givens all coming back in the next anywhere from 2 to 5 weeks. Givens has looked really good in his rehab assignment. Tyler Wells was demoted to Double-A to get a breather. They sent him to their pitching lab in Bel Air. I imagine that he's going to be moved to the bullpen for the rest of the season, especially when you look at the addition of Flaherty. Austin Voth and Keegan Aiken are going to be on their way back as well. What is your expectations for these guys coming back to the bullpen? Do you think that there can be significant improvement to this Orioles relief corps internally at this point?
I think that they feel that way, and I think that was the calculation they made versus giving up, say, a Norby for something. Look, I scratch my head every day when the name DL Hall pops into my head. I don't know what they've done with him this year. I don't know what he's done this year. But the news is apparently that he's going from his stay in Florida, that he's back in Norfolk, and they're going to use him as a relief pitcher. I'm not bragging that I was right about that because, boy, I sure look off base on Ryan Mountcastle right now. But I think that DL Hall and Tyler Wells have a real strong chance at helping this team, in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, his last rehab appearance for DL Hall, he pitched 2 innings. He struck out 5. His fastball was touching 96 miles an hour. It's not 98 to 100 that we're used to seeing from him, but he was at 92, 93 before he went down to Florida. So the velocity seems to be coming back incrementally for him. If they can put him into a relief role and he can come up in like late August through September, be part of a playoff roster potentially, and pitch like he did last September out of the bullpen, it's only a win, in my opinion, for this team. I think
on Wells, I wouldn't see why he couldn't come back and be, a solid 2-inning guy.
Mm-hmm.
He'd be, in my opinion, he could be what Fujinami is without the concerns that you're going to get the ugly Fujinami.
Right.
Wells should be able to go right back into that role. If you recall, and you know me, Paul, long enough, I'm always about these guys being relief pitchers that are sort of questionable starters.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to admit that Tyler Wells looked the part of a starting pitcher for about 18 starts this year, 17 starts. But my concern with him wasn't that he didn't have the stuff to be a good starter. It was always whether or not he would break down. And I thought, given the situation this year, I would have liked to have seen him been that twin tower with Bautista. Remember, when I was talking also back in March, we didn't know what we were going to get out of Cano at all.
Right.
And that's been sort of that looks like right now it's been fool's gold, that we may not get that close to that Cano again. We'll see as time will tell, but it's sure nice to have the option of perhaps getting Tyler Wells in that bullpen.
Yeah, and that was the thing that we talked about in spring training, because it was coming down to that fifth starter role, and it was going to be, is it Tyler Wells, is it Grayson Rodriguez? Wells ended up winning the competition, but the argument was, put Grayson in the rotation, Wells can be that kind of long man, or he can be a back end guy for you, and I think it makes that team that much better, especially with the bad start that Voth got off to as the long relief guy. That Wells could have filled that role and made the Orioles better, which is hard to say because they are very, very good with the best record in the American League, second best record in baseball. But now you're looking at it, and like you said, 18 starts, Tyler Wells was very, very good. Looked like a borderline ace for this team. And I still think that they have visions of him being that guy for them in the future. But I think, like you said, a Twin Towers thing with Felix Bautista in the back end of the bullpen, I think is going to be good for the Orioles the rest of the way. And you also look at it, Stan, when I watched him pitch, when I've been watching Cano pitch recently, I don't think it's a matter of stuff. These guys look absolutely gassed to me. I'm seeing sweat dripping off of Wells' face in the second and third innings. They look just like they're absolutely gassed. That's got to be what it is, right?
I don't know exactly, but I will tell you this. And I play fantasy baseball, and I try and learn as much as I can. My entire pitching staff right now, I've got Nathan Eovaldi went on the IL and right after the All-Star break. Griffin Canning, who must be sort of in the same mode as Wells, is on some kind of over his pit. He's on the IL. Now I've got two starters. I have Luis Castillo last night, has a 5-1 lead over the Angels and couldn't hold it.
Yeah, he's 7 runs.
And Bailey Ober, his last two starts have been off. It seems to be a sort of an endemic right now with starting pitchers and relievers being gassed. I still think there's something from the carryover from the pandemic. I know we seemingly are a couple of years beyond that, but I think it's really had a deleterious effect on pitching stamina. It's been really interesting to watch.
Are you anticipating a similar issue for Grayson Rodriguez as the rest of the season progresses? He's been really good since coming off the IL, and he would look even better, not coming off the IL, since returning from Norfolk. It would look even better without the inherited runners allowed to score once he leaves the ball game. Are you anticipating something similar, or is what you've seen from Grayson Rodriguez indicative of what you think he's going to do the rest of the year?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure yet, but I will tell you this: these first two starts back, or what's it, 3 starts now? The last 2 have been really, really good. And this last one, who did he pitch against the last game? Was it Toronto?
Toronto.
Yeah, that was the best I've ever seen him throw.
Mm-hmm.
But he gets to that 6th inning, and I think it's more mental fatigue than physical fatigue. I don't see the stuff suddenly ticking down. I see his mindset of how to pitch the batters. Look, this is a guy who I've preached has always been treated with kid gloves, going back to when he first came up, where, those first 2 seasons, he was pitching essentially 3 innings or 4 innings, and the club just wanted him to get out of games healthy. That's not a way to develop pitchers. It might be for a guy who had arm problems, but we never heard anything about any, a problem in high school or a problem that arose in year 1 where they said, hey, we just want to get him through this season healthy. It just seemed to be a design that we're going to be very careful with this guy because he's such a tremendous prospect. And I think it really backfired on his development. Now, having said that, you still have 2 incidents that played a part in that. And one was the pandemic, which Mike Elias couldn't predict. And then you also have the lat tear or strain last year, where I think he was very close to being ramped up to go 6 innings in games.
Yeah. Well,
but right now, whatever it is, he looks. The overall thing I see is a guy that is very confident in his stuff. He's confident that he belongs. But boy, it's almost like clockwork. He gets past 5 innings now, and it's just a struggle for him.
Now, his last start, right? He gets into the 6th inning. He's cruising, gets an out, and then he walks a batter. I believe it was Chapman. And then, sorry, it was Brandon Belt. He walks Brandon Belt, and then he's facing Vladimir Guerrero, and it's a 10-pitch
Right.
at bat. 10-pitch at bat, and Vladdy's fouling pitch off after pitch off after pitch off, and he
I
throws
think he was just. I think he gets mentally fatigued when he can't put a hitter away. And that's going to come. Whether it's developing something like a David Cone did when he went sidearm or something different. Because these hitters at the major league level, they're not the guys that you're facing in A, Double A, Triple A. They know how to keep bats alive. That can be very frustrating mentally and physically to a pitcher. You know who's like that, and he still is. I was watching him the other day. Gosman, as good as he is now, and he's a very good pitcher, there's no question. He can get into at bats where guys just are able to foul him off.
Mm-hmm. I remember that from when he was here. Yeah, a lot of foul balls
I
against
used to
him.
watch every start with him. He'd get one bad call by an umpire where I'd say he should have had a strikeout there, and it would all go downhill from there for him. And he's still got a little bit of that in him that he doesn't fully know how to put hitters away. But
now, Stan, the end of that inning, Grayson comes out of the game after that second straight walk. It was a battle with Vladdy. Fujinami comes in, walks a guy, and then hits the next two guys with the bases loaded to allow 2 runs to score. And then there's a routine ground ball to shortstop, and Mateo tries to field the ball and throw it in one motion while also obviously not looking, and he botches the ground ball. Now we're watching Jorge Mateo. I think he was 11 outs above replacement last year. He's 2 this year, and in the last month or two, he's actually like in the negative. So my question is, are we at a point now, especially with the fact that Arias, Mateo, and Joey Ortiz, none of them were traded at the deadline. Mateo hasn't hit for 3.5 months now, and now we're looking at his defense starting to struggle too. Is the writing on the wall that Joey Ortiz's time should be now?
I was asked this by a good friend of mine who really follows the minor leagues quite a bit, and he was really pushing me on this. I'm still a Mateo guy, but I have to be honest. His defense, now that he's a spare player, has not been up to snuff. To give him enough value. I still like him for what he brings to the table. And the key thing for me is I haven't seen, look, any fielder that sits behind you played enough ball. If they're not throwing strikes, it can lead to a lack of focus.
Yeah.
And that one inning, I'm going to sort of throw it on. He just was in a mode where the pitcher wasn't throwing no pitcher was throwing any strikes, and all of a sudden you got a ball hit to you. And he botched it. There's no question about it. He had that double clutch in Philadelphia, and he has not been what he is. I'm still in his camp though right now, but I can certainly see an argument being made that Ortiz, who I understand is the best defensive shortstop in the system, that perhaps it might be time to bring him up to be the spare infielder.
It was reported yesterday that the Orioles were working Mateo out in center field. Is this a thing where, because now they're trying to maximize his value so that when they do, they can bring him in late in the game as a pinch runner for somebody, and then he can go play the outfield if they don't want to get the guys who are already in the infield out of the lineup and out of the defense? Do you think that that's kind of why they're trying him out in the outfield right now, so that he can, fulfill that role if he has to late in ball games as a pinch runner?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense to me that he would. But I haven't seen him play. I know he played a tiny bit of outfield. I think with San Diego. I'm not sure, but I'd have to see him whether I think that he can do that. But certainly, look, I've got to be honest with you. I brought that up to a scout that scouted Jackson Holiday, and I know I mentioned it once on this show 6 or 7 months ago. If you're not going to give Ramon Urias away, and
right.
He's a Gold Glove caliber fielder at third base. And Gunnar, if Urias is playing third base and Henderson's playing short, where is Jackson Holiday going to play? You know,
Right.
I don't think it's just an automatic that Jackson Holiday will be the shortstop of the Baltimore Orioles. I think you can see a scenario where Jackson Holiday could be a center fielder, perhaps. And this scout told me that he could play anywhere, that he would be fantastic in the outfield as well.
That's why they draft a lot of shortstops, because they have that versatility. They're athletes.
They have that versatility.
Yeah. Now, I would love to see how Jorge Mateo can chase down a fly ball that's hitting the gap. That's just something I want to watch. I just want to see him glide to a baseball that shouldn't be caught and catch it. But
what would scare me about him in the outfield is, as we've watched his defense go down as he's become a part-time player, is how much dead time there is for outfielders.
Sure.
You know, whether if you're an infielder, it's almost by safety that you have to really pay attention. You know what I mean? And have focus on every pitch, because that ball is hit to you like a bullet and you're not paying attention. In center field, I wonder if he would have lulls of concentration out there. That's my one fear for him.
It's possible. We saw it in the infield the other day with Fuji on the mound, as you just mentioned. So, Stan, what do you got coming up?
Monday at 4:00, Ross and Luke and I will touch on some baseball stuff, and then on Thursday we got at 7:00. We'll do the Zoom with Andy, Gary Stein, and I will have Andy Dolich and Marty Conway with our sports business confab. And speaking of business, I just want to tell you that we welcome aboard Superbook Sports as a sponsor on all of the press box programs. Superbook is the most trusted name in Vegas, and now you can use promo code StanCharles23 to score up to $250 with their first bet bonus. Win or lose, they will match your first bet up to $250 with promo code StanCharles23, all one word with no spaces. I'm asking all my friends out there who are looking for a sports betting system to go to Superbook Sports.
Superbook Sports. Thank you so much, Stan. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you next week, all right?
All right, guys. Take care.
See
Bye.
ya. That was Stan the Fan Charles back for his weekly segment. Stan has changed up the format for his weekly shows. Now, every Monday at 6 p.m., Stan will be joined by former Orioles pitcher Ross Grimsley and Pressbox's managing editor Luke Jackson to break down the latest with the Birds. Every Thursday night, Stan and Gary Stein will chat with a different newsmaker from the world of sports. This week, the guys caught up with Ahmed Ghaffir from InsideTheBlackAndGold.net, and you can watch the shows live at Facebook.com/Pressbox or find them the next day at PressboxOnline.com/video and YouTube.com/PressboxOnline. So join Stan, Ross, and Luke this and every Monday night. We got to catch a break. When we come back in, the payoff pitch around the league. That's next on the Bat Around.
You feel that? That's the sound of football coming back, and now's the time to place your preseason bets with Superbook Sports. Superbook is the most trusted name in Vegas, and now you can use my promo code GlennClark23 to score up to $250 with their first bet bonus. Win or lose, they'll match your first bet up to $250 with the promo code GlennClark23, all one word, no spaces, two N's in Glenn. Don't miss out this football season. Win some money with Superbook Sports and that promo code GlennClark23. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
It's another exciting weekend of affordable family fun at Prince George's Stadium with the Bowie Bay Sox. One of the most special nights of the season on Friday the 4th, Navy Night. Come celebrate the newest plebe class. Back-to-back fireworks carry on to Saturday with our pregame Touch a Truck event. And it's the last of our big hitter bobbleheads, Colton Cowser on Sunday for the first 750 fans. Get your tickets now by calling 301-805-6000 or anytime online at baysox.com. The Bowie Bay Sox. Let us be your 9-inning vacation.
I'm Michael Jangrandi, president of AJ Michaels, your carrier energy expert for 44 years. Save money, energy, and make your home more comfortable and virus-free. Find us at ajmichaels.com. That's ajmichaels.com.
It's game on every day at Live Casino and Hotel Maryland. Here, you are in on every play with 100-foot screens at Sports & Social, the best table games action, and FanDuel Sportsbook, all just steps away. The best bar bites and drinks to indulgent steaks and curated cocktails. Your game day only gets better when matched up with Live's distinguished dining options. Late game? No problem. Our luxury hotel awaits. Live Casino and Hotel Maryland is the place to be on game day and every day. For more information, visit www.maryland.livecasinohotel.com. At Arundel Mills. Must be 21. Please play responsibly. For help, visit mdgamblinghelp.org or call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Make the most out of every day in your Toyota RAV4. Available in hybrid or gas-only models. A RAV4 can get you where you want to go in style. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new RAV4s from your local Toyota dealer today.
Hike to new heights. The best view is yours in Washington County. Our iconic scenic overlooks provide some of the most breathtaking vistas in the Mid-Atlantic. Some are very easy walks, some can be driven to, and some are the payoff for a moderate to difficult hike. All are near quaint small towns that offer great dining, shopping, hiking gear, and more. Explore our 5 national parks for iconic vistas and wineries with breathtaking views. Visit our quaint historic towns and make your stay unforgettable. Learn more at visithagerstown.com. Maryland, be open.
That first sip. That first bite. Start your day off right with a delicious breakfast at Royal Farms. Choose from a fantastic selection of fresh Royal Farms breakfast sandwiches and top it off with a rich hot cup of the freshest coffee in the world. At Royal Farms, breakfast is available day and night. It's the freshest breakfast in the world. Real fresh, real fast. Royal Farms.
Picking a restaurant to try for the first time? Let's look at the Kotska Inn. Here's a few checklist items. Quality of the food? Check. Quality of service? Check. Does restaurant have plenty of free parking? Check. And finally, does restaurant have delicious steamed crabs, crab cakes, crab soup, and specials galore? Check, check, check. Kotska Inn, 4100 North Point Boulevard. They check all the boxes.
Hey, O's fans, on Saturday, August 5th, when the O's take on the New York Mets at 7:05, celebrate the 40th anniversary of the 1983 World Series by being one of the first 20,000 fans 15 and over to receive an Eddie Murray 1983 World Series bobblehead, presented by Royal Farms. Come out to honor this World Series championship team and arrive early for Early Bird Saturdays, when gates open 2 hours early with happy hour, live music, and more. Get your tickets today at Orioles.com/tickets.
Welcome back into the Banter. I'm rolling right along here on a Saturday morning. Today's show brought to you by Pressbox's Glenn Clark Radio, which is the definitive place to find the best daily discussion of Baltimore sports. Watch the show every weekday from 10 to noon at youtube.com/PressboxOnline or facebook.com/PressboxSports. Or you can listen to PressboxOnline.com/radio with podcasts available on iTunes, Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcasts. You never know who might pop up on GCR. This week, the guys caught up with Hall of Famer John Smoltz, former Cardinals manager Mike Schilt, ESPN's Tim Kirkchin, and even Buster Olney. You can find those interviews and more right now in the Glenn Clark Radio Week in Review feature at PressboxOnline.com.
I want to comment on that real quick, by the way. I just want to comment. I could not care less. Like, there's things I care about, and there's things I absolutely do not care about. And this falls into that category where, like, this is the only time I'm ever going to talk about this, and it's going to be done after this. I do not care about Adley Rutschman taking Mike Messina's number.
At all.
Like,
Mike
it's so
Messina is my favorite pitcher of all time, and I don't care.
It's the most irrelevant discussion to me, and the fact that Buster's still talking about it, mentioned it on Sunday Night Baseball the other night, like, I don't know. The Glenn had him on yesterday. I read what Buster said. You can go watch that if you want to learn. But I don't want to give the argument any more airtime, but it's just not a big deal in any way, shape, or form. People should stop talking about it. Like, they really should stop talking about it.
I don't think people are talking about it. I think Buster.
Maybe Buster's talking about it. Yeah.
And look, he was on Glenn's show, and that was actually a segment I wanted to listen to, but I didn't get an opportunity to, so I might check it out on my way home today.
I did, and it was Buster.
Yeah.
It's just.
Maybe
I'm not gonna spoil it.
You saying that makes me maybe not want to.
You probably would get a little upset, I would think.
Buster, all these people go after Buster, and they're like, he's not invited to the parade. Or, oh, hey, Buster, you remember tweeting this? You remember saying that? And look, there is the one part of me, the one thing I will say is that I don't want to hear Buster Olney say a positive word about this Orioles team or the players on it that are here because of how bad they were during the rebuild. Yeah. I don't want to hear him lauding these players or the Orioles team or farm system because he was so vocal about it being bad for baseball. And I know it's his job to talk about the team.
Yeah.
But bring that same energy, man. Like I don't care what he says anymore. I stopped caring a while ago because it was so obvious that he had an axe to grind, in my opinion.
Definitely.
And so for me, whatever, man. I'm not a big go after Buster on Twitter. I don't really go after anybody. It's hard to say because I do, but I don't. I'm not gonna be a guy who after the fact is gonna come at you and be like, you remember this? But your energy, Buster, when I'm talking directly, the energy that Buster only brought about during the Orioles' really awful rebuild, those 5 seasons where they were just horrendous, or 4 seasons where they were just horrendous, bring that same energy now. Because you don't get to sit there and completely condemn the team for the way that they got here and then laud the team because they're really good now.
So what it reminds me of is the Lamar Jackson argument when people originally said, oh, he can't throw, and then they just kept moving the goalposts every time he'd break a record and he'd do something new, and he'd be, at one point he became the best quarterback in football, and people just still move the goalposts.
Right.
It's what he's doing with the Orioles now, where, bad for baseball. Now that they're winning and they're frankly good for baseball and the viewership is, helping ESPN out and helping the company he works for out, he's now moved the goalpost to, but they gave away Mike Messina's number to Adley Rutschman.
Yeah, and they're only good because they moved their wall back.
Right, and just weird arguments. So anyway, but it's interesting. I would go listen to Glenn Clark Radio's segment.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a segment I want to listen to.
It's important to listen to.
I have to prepare myself because he's such a blowhard. That I have to prepare myself to mentally take 10 to 15 minutes of Buster only speaking.
He just has this thing about him where I feel like there's just this genuine hatred of the Orioles coming out of him. It's bizarre. It's bizarre.
He is so incredibly arrogant. He's so incredibly arrogant about everything baseball. It's almost like he forgot where he came from type of situation.
Where was he originally a beat writer? I'm not
for the Orioles.
It was originally Baltimore. Okay,
yeah.
I know Ken Rosenthal.
I don't know if that's originally, but he what's the word I'm looking for? He cut his teeth with the Orioles.
We know. I mean, we saw Dan Connolly spar with the Angeloses. Maybe he sparred with them at some point, and that's why he's got. Who knows?
I don't know.
I don't want to assume.
To say that Cal Ripken is the most selfish player that you ever covered, and it's not close.
Right.
Cal is widely loved.
Yes.
In Baltimore.
Yes.
And maybe he was a selfish player. I don't know. What I do know about Cal is that he was the first person at the ballpark every day and the last person to leave. He would work out for
really
2 hours.
Yeah.
He stood there and he signed for every fan that wanted an autograph after every single home game. He played every single day because he knew it was what was best for the team. And I don't know that that's selfish. I think it's Michael Jordan-esque. You have to outwork everybody else and lead by example and hold the standards that you hold yourself to, the expectations you have for yourself. If you want to win, you have to have your teammates have those same standards and those same expectations. If that makes Cal Ripken selfish because he demands so much out of his teammates and out of his team in general, okay, then maybe he's selfish. But for Buster Olney to come out and say that, what are you doing?
He said that on Sunday Night Baseball, correct?
Well, I don't know if he said that or if
I saw someone tweet it, but I don't know where it came from.
It was a snippet from something, but I don't know if he said it because I was at the game. I didn't see the broadcast.
Oh, okay, got it.
I was at the game, so all the broadcast stuff is just what I heard and what I saw from people on Twitter. I don't know if it's something that he said in the past and people kept talking about it. I can't imagine he would have said that on the broadcast.
Yeah, that'd be pretty out of place.
Yeah,
I mean, you're probably right. I doubt he said that. But
that's Buster, who, by the way, just reminds me of Pat Oswalt so much.
Really?
Yeah.
No, I don't agree with that. I really
the you know who I'm talking about? The comedian?
Yeah. He's a little bit bigger guy, shorter guy. I know who you're talking about.
They could have been switched at birth.
Really?
I've always thought that. I've just always looked at him and been like, oh, this is why he has a chip on his shoulder.
I gotta look up what Buster Olney looks like again and try to
Look it up.
See.
Look him up and then look up Patton Oswalt, however you pronounce his name. I think because Roy Oswalt. Maybe it's Patton Oswalt, but I'm just stuck on Oswalt.
I mean, I follow Patton Oswalt, however you say it, on Twitter, and he posts pictures of himself sometimes. That's what I'm going off of here.
Well, he's older now.
He is older now.
You look at him at the height of his career, and he's very Buster Olney.
All right,
very Buster
I
Olney.
guess
and
maybe
vice
a little
versa.
bit.
It is time now for the payoff pitch around the league. James McCann collected 3 hits and 5 RBIs versus his former team, and Jordan Westburg reached base 4 times, including a monster home run, driving in 3 as the Orioles outclassed the Mets 10-3. Sean Murphy, Marcell Ozuna, and Austin Riley homered. Acuna tallied 3 hits, and Max Fried allowed 3 singles and 6 shutout innings, walking none and striking out 8 to help the Braves demoralize the Cubs 8-0. Lane Thomas and Joey Menezes combined for 3 home runs and 5 RBIs to lead the Nationals to a comeback victory over the Reds 6-3 and 10. Jose Siri homered and drove in 3. Harold Ramirez had 3 hits and an RBI, and Zach Littell allowed 3 hits over 6 shutout innings as the Rays blanked the Tigers 8-0. Yandy Diaz and Pedro Alvarez each homered, and Hunter Brown picked up a quality start, allowing 2 runs over 6 innings as the Astros handled the Yankees 7-3. Bobby Witt Jr. homered in the 3rd inning to become the only player in MLB history with 20 homers and 30 stolen bases in each of his first 2 seasons, and Jordan Lyles picked up just his 2nd win of the season, allowing 5 earned runs in 5 2/3 innings as the Royals came back on the Phillies to win 7-5. Toronto crushed 5 homers to back a quality start from Alek Manoah, who allowed 3 earned runs over 6 2/3 innings as the Blue Jays got back on track with a 7-3 win over the Red Sox. Andres Jimenez doubled twice in homer, driving in 2 to provide the difference in Cleveland's 4-2 win over the White Sox. Jordan Montgomery allowed 2 runs over 6 solid innings in his Rangers debut, and Adolis Garcia hit 2 solo home runs to help push the Rangers past the Marlins 6-2. Henry Davis homered, and Brian Reynolds collected 3 hits as the Pirates took one from the first-place Brewers 8-4. The Twins hit 3 solo home runs, the last coming off the bat of Michael Taylor in the 7th to push the Twins past the Diamondbacks 3-2. Nolan Jones had 3 hits and 3 ribeyes, and Chris Flexen picked up his first win, allowing 3 runs in 5 innings despite surrendering 10 hits in the Rockies' 8-3 victory over the Cardinals. Julio Rodriguez homered and doubled, driving in 2, and even though Luis Castilla gave up 7 runs on 10 hits, the Mariners managed to pull it out over the Angels 9-7. And finally, 4 Dodgers players drove in at least 2 runs, one of which was David Peralta, who doubled twice in the Dodgers' 10-5 victory over division rival Padres.
3 debuts on tap, pitcher-wise. So we'll start off in the 1 o'clock hour with 2 debuts. Aaron Savale goes against Tariq Skubal. Aaron Savale, of course, coming over from Cleveland, making his first start for the Rays. Tariq Skubal going for the Tigers. That's at 1:10. But Justin Verlander, the more important, I guess, of the 2 debuts, makes his re-debut, I guess you could call it, for the Houston Astros against Nestor Cortez, the former Oriole, going for the Yankees. That's 1:05 in the Bronx, Astros and Yankees. Braves and Cubs. Bryce Elder goes for the Braves. Javier Assad goes for the Cubs, 2:20 at Wrigley Field. George Soriano goes against John Gray, Marlins and Rangers, 4:05 at Globe Life Field. Joan Adon goes against Andrew Abbott, Nationals and Reds, 4:10 at Great American Ballpark. Jose Barrios goes for the Blue Jays, to be determined, goes for the Red Sox, 4:10 at Fenway. Alec Marsh goes against Christopher Sanchez, Royals and Philly, 6:05 at Citizens Bank Park. Tyler McGill goes for the Mets as Kyle Gibson goes for your Baltimore Orioles, 7:05 in Baltimore.
Any relation to Jimmy McGill of Better Call Saul?
I'm sure there's a ton of, I'm sure that
fictional character
definitely works out like that. Yeah,
being.
makes sense. Ross Stripling goes against to be determined again, Giants and A's, 7:07 at the Oakland Coliseum. Ryan Nelson goes against Kenta Maeda, D-backs and Twins, 7:10 in Minnesota. Michael Kopech, Noah Syndergaard, White Sox and Guardians in-division game in the AL Central, 7:10 in Cleveland. Bailey Falter makes his debut for the Pirates. Corbin Burns goes for the Brewers, 7:10 at American Family Field in Milwaukee. Ty Block goes against Steven Matz. 2 lefties go head-to-head, 7:15 at Busch Stadium. That's the Rockies and the Cardinals. To be determined, he's pitching a 3rd game for the Dodgers. Blake Snell goes for the Padres, 8:40 at Petco Park. George Kirby, Tyler Anderson for the Mariners and the Angels to close it out at 9:07 in Los Angeles. So we got.
Very well done. Very well done. Couple of things of personal notes for me. Today, my wife is 17 weeks pregnant.
What size is the baby now?
I was about to say, and our daughter is the size of a large onion. The size of a first non-fruit. She is the size of a large onion.
Wow.
I can't wait till next week when she's the size of an Idaho potato.
So what's like the final fruit? Like is it watermelon or?
Yes.
Okay.
They always say
Watermelon.
it's like pushing a watermelon through a pinhole or something like that.
Yeah. Wow.
Ugh. Women, man, God bless them. God bless them. I was actually thinking about this last night. Actually,
Onion.
I think it was this morning. I got up and went to the bathroom just to number one, and.
Thanks for the clarification.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That was interesting.
And well, because you need the clarification with the next part of this.
Oh, okay.
While I was doing that, my wife had to get up and go use the guest bathroom to go to number one, because the baby's always the bigger the baby gets, the more pushes on the bladder. And I realized she probably had to pee so badly that she couldn't even wait for me for 45 seconds for me to finish in the bathroom myself. And I started thinking about, like, man, for me, I have to remind myself that she's pregnant.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I have to consistently remind myself.
Because you can't see the onion yet.
Right,
Like once it's watermelon, then. Yeah.
Right. And I'm always, like, well aware of the fact that she's pregnant, but I have to remind myself she's carrying a child, a human being in her body right now. And it doesn't. I have to remind myself because I'm not going through that. Her body is changing every single day.
That sounds like middle school.
Right.
Science class.
And like, I have to remind myself that, like, she's going to get tired. And like, well, I'm like, man, why is she going to bed so early? Well, she's pregnant and she's carrying my child. You know what I mean? So I'm like, duh, Paul, she's pregnant just because you can't feel it. She's feeling every single bit of this. And I have to remind myself of that. And it's like, I thought about it this morning. She was coming back from the bathroom. I'm like, man, I couldn't do it. Like, it's got to be scary. It's got to be scary. Like, you're carrying a child, and you have to go through 9 months of this, and then you have to go through the labor of it. And it's just like, oh, my God, my poor wife. I'm sorry I've done this to you. You know? The end result is going to be so worth it, but, man, I'm sorry. Man, I'm sorry that you have to go through this.
I'm sorry I've done this to you.
So
That's one way to put it.
I've really got to like learn to like remind, like, I want to get to the point where I don't have to remind, like, I always know that she's pregnant, but I want to get to the point where I don't have to remind myself of the effects that this is having on her because she is pregnant. So I'm working on it, my one true love, but it's a daily reminder. Maybe once she starts fully showing that she has that watermelon size and not just a large onion, that
large onion, not even a small onion.
No, he's the size of a large.
It's a large.
That
onion.
kid's growing. She's gonna be big and strong.
Is that the right term? Like what?
It says
like what
blank the name of our daughter.
Oh, okay.
Is as big as a large onion.
Bruce Springsteen Valley is the size of that's great.
That's
Bruschetta. You should name her Bruschetta.
Bruschetta.
Yeah,
we're gonna name our daughter Bruschetta.
That's like a meat, right? I think that's like a
no. Bruschetta is the.
It's like an Italian meat.
No, you're thinking of prosciutto. You're thinking of good Italian bread with arugula, tomatoes, some Parmesan, and a balsamic glaze drizzle. And I know that because the restaurant I work in on Saturday nights has very good bruschetta. So our daughter, the size of a large onion. And then another little bit personal news. My sisters are twins, and today is National Twins Day. So happy National Twins Day to my beautiful, wonderful sisters. I love you both very, very much. With that in mind, it is now time for Orioles banter. I don't know what that was about.
You drew that one out a little bit. Yeah,
a little bit. And this is our deadline recap. The Orioles, they traded a week or so before the deadline. They got Shintaro Fujinami. Been some good, been some bad coming out of the bullpen for the Orioles. He was really good last night again. I'm wondering if there's something to his coming into a clean inning rather than pitching with guys on base. There might be something to that. Looked much better last night than he did at any point the other day when he walked a guy and then hit 2 guys in a row with the bases loaded for the Orioles to lose that game. And they traded for Jack Flaherty. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I feel like I was going to say I feel like I can see confidence issues in what Fujinami's done so far. You look at him and he comes to the mound and looks like he's fidgety and sweating a little bit and just nervous about what he's about to go through. And when he comes in with a clean inning, perhaps that anxiety goes away and it just becomes more of an easy outing for him. But when he has guys on base, he certainly looks fidgety, nervous. Last night he looked kind of comfortable compared to what he did a few days ago. And obviously, when you're hitting 2 guys in a row with pitches that really, frankly, weren't even close.
And the one was on an 0-2 count.
You've got to wonder what's going on in that guy's head. Like, you've got to wonder. He just looked like he was just moving all around, and I just looked at him. I felt sorry for him, honestly, because I felt, when I used to pitch in high school, I know what anxiety in the mound feels like, because it's kind of you against the world, you feel like, in that moment, where you're just trying to throw quality strikes, and I think he was trying way too hard to throw quality strikes, and things turned very badly for him very quickly.
That's how I felt with Dean Kramer last night when he completely lost it, because I pitch, and the last game I pitched in was 2 weeks ago, and I threw 1 inning, I gave up 5 runs, and it was my worst outing of the year by a good bit. There was a point where I could not put the ball over the plate. No matter what I did, I could not put the ball over the plate, and it's the most frustrating thing, because it's a mechanical issue. It's a mechanical issue that's now turning into a mental issue. And no matter what you do, unless you put it right down the middle, you can't get the ball over the plate.
Exactly.
And that's what happened to Dean Kramer last night. And I could see it, and I knew all too well exactly how he felt, because I've been there. It's like the most frustrating thing, because you can't find the rhyme. You know what's going on, but you don't know how to fix it in the moment. And I don't have a pitching coach to come out and tell me how to fix it. I got to figure this out on my own. You know what I mean? So I 100% felt for Dean Kramer last night. But we're getting off topic here. Fuji, Jack Flaherty, 2 pretty decent moves to come over for the Orioles prior to the deadline. Mike Elias said that he took some big swings. We heard, again, the rumors about Dylan Cease, Justin Verlander, and Eduardo Rodriguez, amongst others. And he said they probably missed out on some other opportunities trying to make these big deals work. Is that a situation where this is the first time Mike Elias has been the general manager, been running the ship in a moment where the Orioles are buyers? It's the first time he's done it.
Correct.
Right? Do you think that this is a learning experience for him and how he's going to handle deadlines, instead of spending all your time and energy and focus on making this deal that's maybe not going to work? Maybe you give them your best couple of offers, they say no, you got to move on to something else. You think it's a learning experience for that?
I think he's definitely going to learn something from this. I mean, there's some takeaway, and the takeaway is really that you came away with 1 guy when you probably could have came away with 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And you look at the relievers, and there were a lot of guys in the market. There really were. And to not come away with a single one, and Fujinami doesn't really count for me, because that was 2 weeks ago now, maybe a little longer.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily look at that as a deadline move. It was more of just a move to bolster your bullpen at that time. There were guys on the market. You look at Scott Barlow being one of them, and there were plenty of others. I think getting too caught up in Justin Verlander, Dylan Cease could have absolutely distracted him. So, yeah, there will be a learning experience for him. I don't know what that's going to look like, and next year, certainly he's probably going to be in this buying position again, and he can learn from these mistakes and start to maybe delegate a little bit more or something. I'm not sure what the deal is, because I wasn't in that room when he was making these deals. But I certainly think going after Verlander and at least trying and saying, hey, we're interested, that kind of thing is always the right move. I really don't know how, based in reality, those Dylan Cease rumors were. I didn't hear a massive reporter, the Joel Shermans of the world, the Ken Rosenthal's of the world, those kind of guys.
John Paul Morosi, but I don't know where I don't know where Morosi got this
I didn't see him post that.
I don't know where he got this reputation of not being a reliable source, but a lot of people on Orioles Twitter seem to think that he's not a reliable source.
I think he
when
is.
I say a lot of people, I saw like 3 or 4 different people who are, and none of them are like actually verified or anything like that. And maybe they paid for the check mark, but and I guess it's not Twitter anymore; it's X.
It's
you don't tweet; you just post.
I'm never calling it X. I'm not referring to it as X.
It's Twitter.
It's Twitter.
But there are fans that believe he's not a reliable source for whatever reason. I don't know why. And maybe Stan's right. Maybe I need to stop, crediting fans for their opinions. It's just something. It's something that people talk about, so I like to talk about it because who's listening to our show? Fans. So I like to give not credence or credit, but at least talk about what the
people are interested in.
What the people out there are talking about. But
no, you're right. I saw that too. I think Morosi's pretty reliable.
Yeah,
and
he's on MLB Network. I imagine he's a reliable
and
guy.
he had even mentioned Flaherty. He was the guy who mentioned Flaherty in the Orioles connection about 4 hours before the deadline happened. So I certainly see
Elias said that they were talking to Flaherty literally all day.
Yeah.
So this wasn't like a new thing that came at in the last moment. The Dylan Cease thing, I saw people like White Sox fans saying that they should give up like Grayson and Gunnar and Holiday, and it's like, you're not getting one of those guys, let alone all three.
Right.
I saw people saying, I guess it was like the New York Mets version of Utah Street Report, maybe, saying that there should be three guys that they ask for, and they should be for Verlander, number 1, Grayson Rodriguez, number 2, I believe it was Colton Cowser, and number 3, Heston Kjerstad.
I saw a lot of people legitimately saying, and these were fans of other teams, not the Orioles. I think Orioles fans know a lot better than this by now. A lot of people were saying Jackson Holliday for, whoever, whether it was Justin Verlander, Dylan Cease, other teams, and I'm going, do you know just how much they value Jackson Holliday? Do you really understand how much it's...
Jackson, the second somebody said Jack about who they wanted, I guarantee Mike Elias said, no. What's your next best offer?
I really, after the trade deadline happened, and I couldn't have told you this at 2 o'clock or 4 o'clock on that day or whenever, I firmly believe that Mike Elias never once offered Heston Kjerstad, never once offered really any of those
Kobe
top
Mayo,
guys.
Colton
Mayo, Colton Cowser. I really feel like those guys were firmly off the table.
You think Westberg was off the table too?
Yes, I actually think so.
I have loved what Jordan Westberg. He strikes out sometimes. Jordan Westberg does that. But somebody has, I've seen this mentioned a couple times that the fans are reminded of Nick Markakis in the way that Jordan Westberg carries himself, the way that he plays the game, just a gritty, hard-nosed player, doesn't say much, doesn't have...
It's more like J.J. Hardy to me.
No, but J.J. Hardy would smile.
I guess, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, Nick Markakis just showed up and led by example. He played every day, he put the bat on the ball, and he was a really good, gritty player. And I do see that with Jordan Westberg. He shows up. He's never too high. He's never too low. You barely ever see him smile. It's a very stoic look on his face.
Yeah.
He just plays baseball, and he plays it well. And he's very quietly hitting 276 in 27 games with the Orioles right now. Monstrous home run last night. I mean, he hit that ball 424 feet and it got out in about 0.3 of a second.
Yeah.
I would love to see him play more. I'm still waiting. I think we've seen it once or twice where Gunnar Henderson, Colton Cowser, Adley Rutschman, and Jordan Westberg all play in the same lineup. I'm very sorely waiting for that right now.
Yeah.
Would love to see it. But
I firmly believe those guys are off the table. I really think Mike Elias said, okay, there's a number of maybe these lower-level guys, Zach Showalter obviously being one of them, that we're willing to trade, and we're willing to trade from that lower-level depth, but these guys that are AAA, these guys that we really like, and these guys that are in our top 5 or 6 prospects that we value personally, that's the guys that are off the table.
Yeah, and I think Connor Norby is a guy who's maybe on the table.
I think so.
I think he's probably on the table. Joey Ortiz, not maybe Joey Ortiz, but maybe not.
Yeah.
But I think that obviously Prieto. I wonder if Cade Povich was ever brought up. But I agree with you. I think that the power profile from Kobe Mayo and what he's done at AA and AAA this year, Heston Kjerstad has hit everywhere for over a year now. I agree with you. I think that these guys were off the table.
I think it's why the Justin Verlander argument, which or not argument I should say, but the talks kind of started and ended that quickly. And that's what John Heyman went on MLB Network, and he said, well, it basically ended 20 minutes after they started it because clearly they just weren't agreeing. And they probably said, hey, we want Heston Kjerstad. And Mike Elias said, no, it's off the table. Best I can do is Connor Norby. Best I can do is Cade Povich, that kind of thing. And they just couldn't come to that. And you certainly got Drew Gilbert out of that if you're the Mets, and you like that a lot better.
Yeah. And it's credit to Mike Elias. They got a good pitcher out of the deal.
Definitely.
They got a reliever who we think has a lot of upside. And he didn't give away any top 10 prospects to make this happen.
Right.
And now the Orioles are set for the foreseeable future with the prospects they have in-house. I do expect them to do something over the winter, whether it's trading or signing for somebody.
Yeah.
I expect something. But you look at the rest of the division. We talked about this at the beginning of the show. You look at the rest of the division, and this division, in my opinion, is the Orioles to lose at this point. They have the easiest strength of schedule the rest of the way in the American League East. And the Rays, Aaron Savali is a fine pitcher. He's a 3, right?
I think he's like a 2.
I think he's a 2 on his best day, right?
Numbers are pretty good, man.
Yeah,
they're really good.
Yeah, but look at he's an every other year guy. He's like the Jock Peterson of pitching.
No, I think he's better. I think he's better than that.
I mean, Jock Peterson every other year will hit 270 with 25 to 30 home runs, and the next year he'll hit 230 with 16 home runs. I mean, he's That's kind of who Aaron Savale is. 1 year he'll go 15-10 with a 3.15 ERA, and the next year he'll go 8-9 with a 4.43 ERA.
It's based on this year alone, it's been really good. I mean, I think the ERA was 2.6 coming into today, 2.3, somewhere around that. It was in the twos, I believe. So
he's having a good year.
He's having a good year,
and the Rays desperately needed him because they've lost 4/5 of their opening day starting rotation.
Yeah,
and they've got Savale, they've got Glass now, and that's really about it.
Yeah.
They're beat up. The Yankees are beat up. The Red Sox are the Red Sox. I mean, their roster's fine, but it's not good enough to overtake the Orioles and the Blue Jays. Every time they start playing well, the Orioles come to town and kick the crap out of them. So to me, it's the Orioles' division to lose. The pitchers have to get deeper. They need to stop hitting that wall in the 6th inning, and we really need to see this bullpen needs help. And that brings us to John Means, Tyler Wells, D.L. Hall, Austin Voth, and Keegan Aiken, and Michael Givens. I do not see a scenario in which Keegan Aiken becomes a regular part of the bullpen again.
No way.
He can't.
No.
At this point, you can't trust him. Even when he was healthy, he was. And you look at it. So I looked this up early in the year. Last year's league average for inherited runners allowed to score was 34%, and the Orioles as a team allowed 37%.
Yeah.
Mike Baumann came in last night. They said inherited runners stranded 61%. That means he allows 39% of inherited runners to score. That's above league average.
Yeah.
Keegan Aiken, Brian Baker, who got sent to AAA for the Jack Flaherty move. Those guys can't have a role in this team the rest of this year.
Great.
They can't. Austin Voth, maybe he was injured and that's why he didn't pitch well. I think he's going to get another opportunity, especially because he signed that 2-year deal. I don't think he can be optioned either. Unless they DFA him, Austin Voth's going to get an opportunity.
Should. Yeah.
John Means, I imagine, is going to be a bridge reliever, maybe a 2 or 3 inning guy out of the bullpen. DL Hall and Tyler Wells, 1 to 2 inning guys each. Michael Givens has looked really good on this rehab. And the point I'm making is there's not a lot of room for a lot of guys coming back. And what are the Orioles going to do about this? And it's one of those situations where in the beginning of the year when it was like, well, what do they do with their bullpen when Tate and Givens come back? You cross that bridge when you come to it, but it's not something that you don't think about.
I mean, there's not a guy that you mentioned, and to be honest, I don't remember every guy you mentioned, but just the ones I do remember: John Means, Michael Givens, Keegan Aiken, the Brian Baker of the world if he comes back up, even the Joey Crabels of the world. We could throw into this because he's on the team at the moment. There is not a guy in that group I trust. And Michael Givens, I would trust. He's had a long career of pretty good baseball and pretty good pitching, but he has been hurt all year. And when he was here, he wasn't good at all. He was horrible.
He's pitched really well.
He has, and that's great. But I want to see it transfer at the major league level, and until then, I won't trust it yet.
So you're not trusting in DL Hall, you're not trusting in Tyler Wells, and I think anything you get out of John Means is a bonus.
Right? Maybe. Tyler Wells is the one I'm kind of on the fence about because I just feel like he's mentally and physically exhausted. I feel like he's kind of hit his limit, and I don't know how much more you're going to get out of him. If you do put him back in the bullpen, he might only be able to pitch twice a week. So maybe even if he's good, I don't see a lot of quantity out of him. I just don't see a name in there where I'm like, man, that's going to really change this bullpen for the better. I just don't.
Do you look at? I think we can all agree that Joey Ortiz should be here now.
Oh, undoubtedly.
And I think that the Orioles' best infield is. When I say infield, I'm not talking about first base. Westberg at second, Gunnar at third, Ortiz at shortstop.
That's the best.
And then you have Arias and Frazier getting their spot starts. But the problem is, Adam Frazier has been just good enough that you can justify him being in the lineup, and Brandon Hyde will start him 5 times a week.
Yeah.
At the expense of a Westberg, at the expense of maybe a Joey Ortiz, who I think if he comes up, he's a utility guy in Brandon Hyde's mind. At the expense of a Ramon Arias. Yeah. So to me, I think the best version of the Orioles is those 3 guys that I mentioned: Gunnar, Ortiz, Westberg around the bend. I just don't think it's going to happen.
So I look at Mateo, and Connor Newcomb tweeted it the other day on his Locked On Orioles account. He said, "It's time to make the move."
Yeah,
it's time to make the move. Like I'm just going to corroborate that. It's the Orioles have for too long accepted no bat, and everything else is kind of a mediocre. Mm-hmm. The speed's been great. I mean, that's always what it is. But when I say everything else, I mean defense, I mean accuracy of throws, I mean everything. It's been very, very underwhelming Jorge Mateo has done very little for this team since May.
Yeah.
And really before May. It was April where he was extremely good.
And then you look at it, the last time he got a base hit, he stole second, and that got thrown out trying to steal third.
Right. The value isn't there anymore, and there really isn't a place for Ryan McKenna and Jorge Mateo on the same team.
There shouldn't be.
If you want one of them, fine. I can live with it, and we've lived with it for all year, and now there's both of them on this team. And I look at that and I go, there's really not better options when Heston Kjerstad is in the minor leagues and Joey Ortiz has already been here 3 times, I think it was. Joey Ortiz should be here instead of Mateo. I can live with Heston Kjerstad not being here right now. But I understand that. But Jorge Mateo doesn't have a place.
Colton Cowser is a prime example of what happens when you bring a top prospect up. That sometimes this can happen. Sometimes they can be... I've said it so many times. Sometimes you're the bug, sometimes you're the windshield. Mm-hmm. How a top prospect can be the bug for an extended period of time.
Right.
And I was hoping that Cowser was going to break out of that slump, that double that he hit, that he just absolutely smoked to the gap the other day, that was the start of it. And then even though he walked at one point last night, he had another really bad-looking strikeout.
Bats weren't good.
Yeah, so...
I noticed with Cowser, he struggles terribly with high and away.
Yeah. He flails.
He just flails, and he's just sticking the bat out there and hoping to foul it off.
Yeah.
He should just stop swinging at those. Even if it's a strike, he should just hold the bat on his shoulder, because at the end of the day, he has been very unsuccessful in that part of the zone. I know Baseball Savant does their hot zone chart where they'll show you what part of the zone he's probably making the most contact in. I would assume it's down and in for him from what I've seen so far, but there really hasn't been a lot of contact. He's been striking out way too much.
He's got 6 hits.
Yeah, 6 hits. And how many at bats?
Like 60.
Yeah. So
he when he had his first bat last night, he was batting 115.
Right. So it's probably about 100 now. That makes sense. Yep.
Yeah. So, which is why I think they would be hesitant to pull the trigger on bringing up a Kjerstad, bringing up an Ortiz. But Ortiz's bat speed, and we've already seen him up here. I think Ortiz provides more, and he's also proven he can play elite defense at second base and third base if that's where you need to put him. So he looks comfortable and he looks fluid at every infield position that you would want to put him at. But are you going to stop playing Frazier? Are you going to stop playing Aaron Hicks when he comes back? Are you going to stop playing Ramon Arias? You run into that problem. A lot of good players for not a lot of spots. And when you bring Kjerstad up, are we looking at Heston Kjerstad the same way that we looked at Gunnar Henderson last year, where it's like maybe he should be here now, probably should be here now, but he's not going to get here till the end of the month?
Probably. I mean, Stan said it. There's really not a great place for him to play right now, and you don't want him sitting on the bench.
Yeah, well, but he also said that one of the first things he said was the time has come for it to be Kjerstad over McKenna.
Oh, well, definitely. I agree with that. But again, McKenna, I mean, he has played the last 4 days.
Yeah.
So I guess I can't really make that argument.
I think we'd all much rather see Heston Kjerstad playing the last 4 days than
undoubtedly. But again, you've got to have guys who can play center field. Aaron Hicks coming back. Cedric Mullins coming back. That's also going to create a logjam in the outfield. McKenna's going to be the casualty. We know that, obviously. Sooner rather than later. But then if they want to have both of those guys on the same roster, given that they come back at the same time, it's going to be tricky.
And are you going to have a roster that now is going to, when Mullins comes back, you're going to have Hayes, Mullins, Cowser, Santander, Hicks,
right,
O'Hearn, and Kjerstad? How do you fit all those guys onto the roster?
It's impossible, really. I don't think you can.
I think Hicks might be a DFA candidate.
He could be.
He might be, but I also think that Brandon Hyde loves Hicks. So...
I mean, I've liked Hicks a lot more than I certainly could have expected to.
Yeah.
Because he's been a lot better than everybody expected.
But do you want him playing over any of those guys I just mentioned?
No.
Exactly. We got to catch a break. I want to remind you today's show is brought to you by the latest edition of Press Box, which is available now. On the cover, Dave Ginsburg remembers Goose as he looks back on the impact the late Tony Saragusa had both on and off the field in Baltimore. Plus, he explains how Goose's kids are working to continue that legacy with the Goose Flights program. Also inside, Todd Karbovich profiles the path Tyler Wells has taken in becoming a star in the Orioles rotation, and you'll find a special summer travel guide with information about events and activities throughout the state. Pressbox is available for free at over 500 area locations, including 60 Royal Farm stores, and you can always find the entire edition as well as the best daily coverage of the Orioles, Ravens, and Terps at PressBoxOnline.com. When we come back in from the Baltimore Banner, Andy Kotska. That's next on the Bat Around.
It's a Maryland thing you wouldn't understand. Where the waves meet the shore, you will find Dorchester County. Hi, this is Jimmy Charles. When I think of Maryland, I think Dorchester County on the Eastern Shore where it's open for making memories. Dorchester County, it's a Maryland thing. For more info, visit www.visitdorchester.org.
It's a Maryland thing. Hell yeah. It's a Maryland thing. Hell yeah. Picking a restaurant to try for the first time? Let's look at the Kotska Inn. Here's a few checklist items. Quality of the food? Check. Quality of service? Check. Does restaurant have plenty of free parking? Check. And finally, does restaurant have delicious steamed crabs, crab cakes, crab soup, and specials galore? Check, check, check. Kotska Inn, 4100 North Point Boulevard. They check all the boxes.
Hey, O's fans, on Saturday, August 5th, when the O's take on the New York Mets at 7:05, celebrate the 40th anniversary of the 1983 World Series by being one of the first 20,000 fans 15 and over to receive an Eddie Murray 1983 World Series bobblehead, presented by Royal Farms. Come out to honor this World Series championship team and arrive early for Early Bird Saturdays, when gates open 2 hours early with happy hour, live music, and more. Get your tickets today at Orioles.com/tickets.
Are you a diehard O's fan looking for the perfect way to show your team spirit? Look no further than Birdland Sports. Birdland Sports is a small business run by fans for fans. They offer a wide variety of unofficial O's merchandise, from the Birds Are Coming tees to player cartoon shirts and more. And the best part? Their prices are more affordable than the big guys. So head to birdlandsports.com and grab your gear today. Show your support for the Birds with Birdland Sports.
Soak up summertime fun in Charm City. Enjoy only in Baltimore festivals, mouth-watering eats, and endless entertainment. Cheer on the O's at Camden Yards. Pick crabs by the waterfront. Beat the heat inside a world-class museum, and make memories that will last a lifetime. Go to baltimore.org for more information and to plan your visit.
I'm Griffin Bass, and I have the extraordinary, mind-blowing, and life-affirming pleasure of being the new producer for the absolute funniest, smartest, and most handsome sports host in all of Baltimore. Wait a second, Glenn, I'm working for you, not Jeremy Kahn. If you're not listening to Glenn Clark Radio, here's what you're missing.
He's Coach Kevin Willard.
Glenn, thanks for having me.
Baltimore Ravens wide receiver, Rashad Bateman.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
He is outfielder Cedric Mullins.
Thank you guys for having me.
Mr. Marcus Williams, who's now with us.
Man, appreciate it. Happy to be on.
Ravens kicker Justin Tucker.
Thanks for having me.
Adley Rutschman.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
John Angelos.
Thanks a lot. Good to be with you.
He is Gunnar Henderson.
Thank y'all so much.
Marlon Humphrey.
Thank you.
Talia Tungavailoa.
Thank you guys for having me.
He is J.K. Dobbins.
Thank you for having me. I had a great time.
The great Ray Lewis.
Always good to be on.
He is Mr. Cal Ripken Jr.
Good chatting with you.
Watch Glenn Clark Radio at youtube.com/PressBoxOnline and listen live at PressBoxOnline.com/radio or anytime on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, or anywhere you get your podcasts.
I'm Michael Jangrandy, president of AJ Michaels, your carrier energy expert for 44 years. Save money, energy, and make your home more comfortable and virus-free. Find us at ajmichaels.com. That's ajmichaels.com.
All electronic tolling is here to stay in Maryland, and DriveEasyMD.com helps you cruise a little easier. We're Maryland's tolling resource, home to EasyPass, pay-by-plate, and video tolling. It's never been easier to pay your way. DriveEasyMD.com. We'll keep you moving.
You feel that? That's the sound of football coming back, and now's the time to place your preseason bets with Superbook Sports. Superbook is the most trusted name in Vegas, and now you can use my promo code GlennClark23 to score up to $250 with their first bet bonus. Win or lose, they'll match your first bet up to $250 with the promo code GlennClark23. All one word, no spaces, two N's in Glenn. Don't miss out this football season. Win some money with Superbook Sports and that promo code GlennClark23. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
All right, welcome back to the Bat Around. Rolling right along here on the show today, and joining us now, excuse me, joining us now from the Baltimore Banner, he is Andy Kotska. Andy, good morning. It's Paul. It's Zach. How are you today?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
We're doing very well. Glad to have you on. The last time we had you on, you were quite under the weather. You sound like you're doing well today, so glad to hear that you are feeling better. Orioles been feeling good all year. They have the best record in the American League, second best record in baseball, and first place in the toughest division in baseball, that being the AL East. And, Andy, they go out at the trade deadline. They pick up Jack Flaherty for Drew Rom, Cesar Prieto, and Zach Showalter. Should fans be upset at the cost of a rental? And if they shouldn't be upset, why does Jack Flaherty make that cost okay?
They should not be upset at the cost. It's kind of the going rate. Honestly, they did well. There were many players kind of on the realm of possibility that the O's could go for that Mike Elias decided not to go for purely because of the cost. Be it a top 10 prospect. There were a lot of names that Elias said that just were off limits for him, and that was difficult to kind of shake teams from looking at. Obviously, because they're great players in the minor leagues and attractive trade pieces for a team that's rebuilding. But Drew Rom was going to have trouble breaking through in the starting rotation for this team. And so I think this is a totally respectable deal. Zach Showalter a ways off in the minor leagues. Cesar Prieto is quite a good hitter, but you have a lot of infield prospects, so you can kind of you can weather that and feel like you're getting a starting pitcher that can help push to October, maybe win the division, and you never know. Maybe more in October. So definitely, to me, it was a totally fair deal, and the kind of deal that the Orioles needed to make to add some support for a rotation that has been a little bit taxed of late.
Yeah, absolutely taxed. Tyler Wells, prime example, looked absolutely gassed before getting sent to Bowie. And we'll talk about him in just a little bit. But sticking with Jack Flaherty, comes out, shoves in his first outing. He threw more 96-mile-an-hour fastballs in his first Orioles start than he had all year, 7-6, including his fastest pitch at 97 miles an hour. I believe that was on his first fastball that he threw. Did he mention anything after the game? Did the Orioles make any kind of tweaks with him, or is it just one of those things where he was just kind of riding on adrenaline?
Yeah, I actually asked him specifically in Toronto to see whether he had made a tweak or whether, it was adrenaline / 8 days, rest between his last start and Thursday. It was more of the adrenaline and the fact that he had, had an extended break between his last start and Thursday. We'll see. I mean, the O's have a track record of making tweaks and adjusting, a player's repertoire or, mechanical, outlook to have, different looks. But he had 24 hours. He arrived Wednesday in Toronto, and really the only thing the Orioles were thinking of was, how can we make him feel as comfortable as possible with Adley Rutschman behind the plate and throw a good performance. And they, achieved that with, the very little preparation they were able to have. So yeah, none, no mechanical tweaks yet. Those will come, but he looked great. There was a lot of adrenaline for him. First time in 9 seasons, since he was drafted, first round as a Cardinal, that he pitched in a different uniform. So it was a big day for him, and he stepped up.
Yeah, he looked absolutely fantastic. Every bit the pitcher the Orioles were hoping, at least through one start when they traded for him on Tuesday. No other moves made at the deadline, Andy, and Mike Elias said that it was one of the craziest deadlines that he's ever seen. So they took a lot of big swings with nothing coming to fruition. Also said that they probably missed out on other opportunities by focusing too much on those big swings. They were linked to Verlander, linked to Dylan Cease, among others. How close did they actually come to landing either one of them? And in either case, was Jackson Holliday ever asked for? Because I'm sure he wasn't offered. I'm sure that the conversation stopped and ended if he was mentioned.
Yeah, I don't know the specific on whether Jackson Holliday's name came up. I do know that many of those top 10 prospects, be it a Heston Kjerstad or a Jordan Westburg or Gordon Cowser, I mean, those names crop up. In trade conversations. I mean, teams want to know how much can they get back, and Elias was not willing to trade the future for in Jack Flaherty's case, a rental. You never know with, if they had gone with Eduardo Rodriguez, he has a player option. Maybe he would have, maybe he can opt out, or if he stayed, they might have been more willing to pay on that regard because you have the potential to have a guy for multiple years after this one. But they were, the front office was very passionate about keeping Jackson Holliday, not having him part of any trade.
Sure.
So yeah, I don't know exactly if his name came up. I assume it had to have. Teams are going to start with the best and then kind of work down. But he was a non-starter for the O's.
I think we all agreed that the Orioles probably needed to add an impact reliever aside from Fujinami. They weren't able to do that, so now it looks like they're going to be having to improve the bullpen from within. And from within, you're looking at probably Tyler Wells, D.L. Hall, Michael Givens, maybe even John Means as a reliever rather than a starter when he comes back. Are the Orioles looking at those as the moves that they were going to be making for the bullpen the rest of the way? And how likely are we to see John Means be in that reliever role rather than a starting role?
Yeah, I'd be actually really surprised if John Means takes over a starting role, and it's actually possible, just to backtrack a little bit. It's entirely possible to use him as an opener.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit of an easier warm up process for a guy that is used to being a starter. If you're going to say, hey, we want you to pitch 2 innings at the beginning of a game, to kind of go through his normal routine and have a starter routine, so you don't stress anything out before, for a guy that's just coming off Tommy John surgery. So that's entirely possible that they use John Means as kind of that opener, and then you can always have Tyler Wells as a pen for a couple innings behind him. I think piggybacking is definitely a possibility. I would, all the names you mentioned, Wells, Theo Hall, John Means. I know you said another one in there too.
Michael Givens.
All those are, Michael Givens. If and when he comes back, I mean, all those are definite possibilities to be out of the bullpen. It's going to be a case where, if you think about the postseason, they don't need a 5-man rotation.
Sure.
In the postseason, you can usually get away with, 4, if not 3, if you go short rest. So, think of, who knows, maybe that means Bradish is in the bullpen, or maybe that means Dean Kramer's in the bullpen. Whatever alignment they want to go, if Kyle Gibson's the one that moves to the bullpen, they have the ability now to have the overflow effect of, certain starters will find, as the season goes on, and especially in the postseason, that they're going to be more bullpen pieces. And that's a pretty normal thing for, teams to do. And I think it's definitely it's the way that this team's going to have to do it, just because they didn't go out and get another reliever, which I don't think they necessarily needed to do it, just because they have the starting pitching options that they can kind of push into the bullpen, especially if you think that, D.L. Hall comes back with the velocity that he had previously. If John Means comes back in any form of himself, you feel pretty good.
Now, you mentioned John Means maybe as an opener piggybacking with Tyler Wells, and you also mentioned you don't need a 5-man rotation in the playoffs, but to get through the rest of the regular season before the playoffs, the Orioles, they have 4/5 of their starting rotation, and I'm including Tyler Wells in this, who have come up on not innings limits, but career highs in innings. Wells has already gone down to Bowie to work on some things. Dean Kramer, Kyle Bradish, Grayson Rodriguez, all either at or approaching their career highs. Do you see the Orioles potentially going to a 6-man rotation the rest of the way to kind of use that piggyback with a John Means and potentially save some of these guys so that they're a little bit fresher and not hitting a wall right as they're making it into the postseason?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen other teams take that approach. I wouldn't be shocked if the Orioles did it, although I think the thing that prevents them from doing a 6-man rotation is purely because they'd like to have 8 guys in the bullpen. And they don't want to necessarily have a 7-man bullpen with, 6-man rotation. We'll see. I think that's definitely a possibility, and all things are on the table. And right now, Tyler Wells is the first one that you saw kind of run into that. I know he says his body felt physically fine. It looked to be fatigue. As he runs up, career high in innings. We'll see if that strikes other players to the same extent. But, I would imagine that everything is on the table for this organization, be it a 6-man rotation or what else. So, yeah, definitely something that they're considering. I would be surprised if they move to it in August. Maybe that's a September thing when rosters expand.
Sure.
They have a little bit more flexibility. But, yeah, we'll see. I definitely think it's something being considered.
Are we looking at Heston Kjerstad as the 2023 version of Gunnar Henderson, where he's tearing it up in the minor leagues, and it looks like he should be here now, but they're going to wait till the end of the month? try and keep those at-bats lower to keep his rookie status intact for next year? Or is it just a matter of, yeah, he could probably be here now and be an impact player, but who's he going to play over? Is that the situation we're looking at with Kjerstad?
Yeah, I think he would probably be a late addition to this roster, kind of in the same vein that Gunnar Henderson was. But I mean, as you mentioned, it'd be tough to find playing time for him because he can't play in center field. And once Cedric Mullins comes back, you feel really good about an outfield of Santander, Hayes, and Mullins.
Right.
So it will be. I think there will be opportunities for him. When rosters expand, you can have him in there. But I think, that's something that is always going to be a case where you don't want to steal that bats from a guy too early in the minor leagues if he's not going to be, an everyday starter. So we'll see exactly when he comes up, but I imagine by, sometime September he'll be an Oriole.
Andy Kotska of the Baltimore Banner joining us here on the Batter Round. Just another minute or two with Andy here, and we're talking about Heston Kjerstad, but now Joey Ortiz. The writing's been on the wall with Jorge Mateo. The bat hasn't played since the end of April. The defense is still good, but not as good as it was last year, and he's been making some more mental errors in the recent weeks with less playing time. None of the infielders were traded at the deadline. Are we looking at a time now where Joey Ortiz could be here sooner rather than later? And if he is here, are you looking at Joey Ortiz being an everyday player? Or is he filling kind of a utility role where he's gaining cobwebs on the bench like he did the last time around?
I think it would probably be more of a utility role. I kind of envision Ramon Arias at third, Gunnar at short, and Frazier or Westberg at second. It's kind of the way it probably will shake out. But I mean, we'll see. I definitely do think Joey Ortiz will be an addition sooner rather than later. He's hitting so well in AAA. I think has like a 950 OPS right now, and Mateo has struggled. With really since I don't think he has a home run since April. We've seen some more of those errors. If you think about Wednesday's game, a pretty costly error in the Fujinami inning.
Sure.
So yeah, I think the problem with moving on from Mateo is really that somebody, most likely, some other team will pick him up on waivers, and he's not a guy that they always want to get rid of because he's a pinch run option that could be really valuable, and in the postseason especially, or late this season. He's can play, like worst case scenario, can play center field if there's something that happens to Mullins in the postseason. So he brings a lot in those defensively, and I know his defense hasn't been as standout as it was last year, but still, a good defender, great base runner. I would have a hard time believing that they'd be willing to try to sneak him through waivers because he probably would get picked up. But I definitely think Joey Ortiz is making a case that Gunnar and Ortiz can split time at shortstop rather than Mateo and Gunnar. But it's a lot to consider with the possibility of losing a guy on waivers. They definitely don't want to do that either.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can all agree on that. And if Joey Ortiz is going to play more, it's one of those things where he's going to have to force their hand to because of how well he's performing. Before we let you go, Andy, we play a little game here called Take to Rake on the Bat Around. The rules are simple. There's one rule. You can't take any player that was taken by, in your instance, by the guest who picked last week. Ben McDonald was on the show last week. He took Gunnar Henderson, and Gunnar Henderson won Take to Rake last week. So you get to pick first today. Any player except for Gunnar Henderson is available, and it's who you think is going to have the best offensive week from today's game through our show next Saturday.
Wow. Okay, let's put him in the spot. Anthony Santander. I think he's gonna turn around and have a really good week.
I think that's a solid pick. I thought that for last week and took him, and I came in last. But he is due for a huge breakout here. So, Andy, thanks so much for joining us on the show. Where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, subscribe to the Baltimore Banner. It's not just me. It's John Mioli, Daniel Allentuck, Kyle Goon. There's a lot of good content on there.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much, Andy, and we'll talk to you down the line. Enjoy the rest of the season.
Yeah, appreciate you.
All right. That was Andy Kotska from the Baltimore Banner. We're going to hit our final break here, and when we come back in, we'll close things out with Zach's and my pick, and Zach's got to run, so we're going to close things out pretty quickly after the break. Stay tuned for more on the Bat Around next.
It's game on every day at Live Casino and Hotel Maryland. Here, you are in on every play with 100-foot screens at Sports and Social, the best table games action, and FanDuel Sportsbook, all just steps away. The best bar bites and drinks to indulgent steaks and curated cocktails. Your game day only gets better when matched up with Live's distinguished dining options. Late game? No problem. Our luxury hotel awaits. Live Casino and Hotel Maryland is the place to be on game day and every day. For more information, visit www.maryland.livecasinohotel.com. At Arundel Mills. Must be 21. Please play responsibly. For help, visit mdgamblinghelp.org or call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Catch that festival feeling in Charm City. Everywhere you go, you'll find exciting entertainment, delicious eats, and endless summertime fun. Cheer on the O's at Camden Yards, pick crabs by the waterfront, beat the heat inside a world-class museum, and make memories that will last a lifetime. Go to baltimore.org for more information and to plan your visit.
Maryland drivers, did you know you can save up to 77% on tolls with an Easy Pass Maryland discount plan? That's right, 77%. It's never been easier. Pick the plan that's right for you at driveezmd.com. We'll keep you moving.
Hey, O's fans, on Saturday, August 5th, when the O's take on the New York Mets at 7:05, celebrate the 40th anniversary of the 1983 World Series by being one of the first 20,000 fans 15 and over to receive an Eddie Murray 1983 World Series bobblehead, presented by Royal Farms. Come out to honor this World Series championship team and arrive early for Early Bird Saturdays, when gates open 2 hours early with happy hour, live music, and more. Get your tickets today at Orioles.com/tickets.
It's another exciting weekend of affordable family fun at Prince George's Stadium with the Bowie Bay Sox. One of the most special nights of the season on Friday the 4th, Navy Night. Come celebrate the newest plebe class. Back-to-back fireworks carry on to Saturday with our pregame Touch a Truck event. And it's the last of our big hitter bobbleheads, Colton Cowser, on Sunday for the first 750 fans. Get your tickets now by calling 301-805-6000 or anytime online at baysox.com. The Bowie Bay Sox. Let us be your 9-inning vacation.
Whether your focus is luxury and comfort, convenience and technologically advanced connectivity, or sporty performance and aggressive styling, we've got the perfect Highlander for you. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Highlanders from your local Toyota dealer today.
That first sip. That first bite. Start your day off right with a delicious breakfast at Royal Farms. Choose from a fantastic selection of fresh Royal Farms breakfast sandwiches and top it off with a rich hot cup of the freshest coffee in the world. At Royal Farms, breakfast is available day and night. It's the freshest breakfast in the world. Real fresh, real fast. Royal Farms.
It's a Maryland thing you wouldn't understand. Where the waves meet the shore, you will find Dorchester County. Hi, this is Jimmy Charles. When I think of Maryland, I think Dorchester County on the eastern shore, where it's open for making memories. Dorchester County, it's a Maryland thing. For more info, visit www.visitdorchester.org. It's a Maryland thing. Hell yeah. It's a Maryland thing. Hell yeah.
The latest edition of Press Box is available now. On the cover, Dave Ginsburg remembers Goose as he looks back on the impact that late Tony Saragusa had both on and off the field here in Baltimore. Plus, he explains how Goose's kids are working to continue that legacy with the Goose Flights program. Also inside, Todd Karpovich profiles the path Tyler Wells has taken to becoming a star in the Orioles rotation. And you'll find a special summer travel guide with information about events and activities throughout the state. Press Box is available for free at over 500 area locations, including 60 Royal Farm stores. And you can always find the entire edition, as well as the best daily coverage of the O's, Ravens, and Terps at PressBoxOnline.com.
All right, we are back here live with you on the Bat Around, and by we, I mean me, Paul Valley. I'm back with you, Zach. As you can see, I am not Zach. Zach is headed to Florida on a family vacation with the family. He had to be out of here promptly at noon, and we ran a little bit long, still much shorter than we usually do, but Zach could not stick around for the final segment. So in case you were wondering, last week, I had Anthony Santander. Ben McDonald took Gunnar Henderson, and Zach took Ryan O'Hearn. Gunnar hit .323. He had 2 home runs, 6 RBIs, 4 doubles in the week amongst his 10 hits. O'Hearn hit .333, but Gunnar's OPS was about 200 points higher in the 960 range, whereas O'Hearn was in the 760 range. So Gunnar won. O'Hearn came in second. Anthony Santander, the hits that he got were really big. He had a 3-hit game in there. He had a grand slam. He drove in 6, but otherwise he left much to be desired. 208 with a 292 on base percentage last week. I got to tell you, this is my worst performance in the history, I think, of Take to Rake. I don't think I've won in the last 2 months. I maybe 1 or 2 wins in the last 2 months, but it's been pretty bad, a pretty bad stretch. I got to turn it on here for the rest of the season. Zach told me his pick. Obviously, he's taking Gunnar Henderson for this week since that player is available to him. We heard Andy Kotska from the Baltimore Banner, and he took Anthony Santander, who was my pick last week. So that leaves me with a number of options. Part of me really wants to take Jordan Westburg because I really like the way he's been playing, and I think he's been quietly swinging a really productive bat for the Orioles since coming up to the ball club. But I also know that he's not going to play as much because of Adam Frazier. So we're looking at this team. Can I take anybody other than Adley? It's got to be Adley, right? I got to take the Adley pick. Adley's due for a home run or two. He really hasn't homered in a couple of weeks. So yeah, I'm going to take Adley Rutschman. Andy Kotska, again from the Baltimore Banner, coming on and taking Anthony Santander after Ben McDonald's win with Gunnar Henderson last week. Zach taking the low-hanging fruit. He's going to be taking Gunnar Henderson. I'm taking Adley Rutschman for this week on Take to Rake. That's going to do it for us on the show today. Orioles playing some excellent baseball. They're coming up tonight. The 40th anniversary celebration of the 1983 World Series. Jim Palmer throwing out the first pitch. If you're going to the game, you're going to want to get into your seats by about 6:20. At least that's what Brett Hollander said on the broadcast last night, because there's a lot that's going to be celebrated at Camden Yards tonight. And they're giving away an Eddie Murray bobblehead, which is so freaking awesome. I wish I would have had the foresight earlier in the year to take this Saturday off from the restaurant to go to the game. Because, I missed the 60th anniversary of the Baltimore Orioles in 2014, and that was an epic win over the Cardinals. And the Orioles had a magical season that year. I missed that. I missed the 30-year celebration of Camden Yards. And now I'm missing the 40-year celebration of the 83 World Series. I got to get better at really figuring out the dates ahead of time and having the foresight to take off from the restaurant when I want to come in and see these games. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you to our guest, Stan the Fan Charles, for his weekly segment. Another great segment with him today. Andy Kotska from the Baltimore Banner. Always nice when we get to talk. He always has great intel and great conversation points for us. Thank you to all of our sponsors. Without you, we don't have a show. Thank you to all of our listeners. Without you, we definitely do not have a show. Ravens back in training camp. They are looking for a huge season. Zach and I will give our thoughts on that next week when he's back and has more time. Orioles first place in the best division in baseball with the second best record in baseball. They seem to win every night these days. It's a special time, Baltimore, to be a Baltimore sports fan. Hope you're enjoying it as much as we are.